OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow.
All right, let's mow indeed. 7:30 this Tuesday morning. It's time for us to see what football looks like in the new middle interim assistant to the potential interim manager era at Manchester United. Because tonight, they're at Villarreal to face Unai Emery and see what they can do. Now, shorn of their manager and the shield that he has provided to the players in recent weeks, how will the players respond? Will they put in their best performance of the season? They may well do so. We'll find out tonight. It's an early kick-off, just to mark your cards. Isn't that right? It's a 5:30.
Yeah. 5:45, I think, isn't it?
Right. So, it's going to cause I just realised it's going to cause a little bit of friction in many houses. It's around the time when, got to get a bit of homework and get a bit of dinner done. But no, it's work. You have to watch this. You're going to have to sit there like a Man United fan and dutifully say, this is work for us tonight. So if you're a Manchester United fan, let's be having you. How are you feeling about everything? The Pochettino rumours, they're just sucking you in to the point where you're like, yes, we're going to get Pochettino. It's not going to be Brian Robson for the next 6 months or Gaza. That's the level we're at the moment, isn't it? A Brian Robson Gaza dream team.
That would certainly be. They may as well feed the beast at the moment. That is consuming Manchester United content rather than just going with boring Michael Carrick at this point. Give him Roy Keane, give him whoever, give him Mark Hughes. I'm reading this morning in the Mail as a potential option.
Yeah.
If they're looking for options.
We were floating that yesterday. I made the point. I don't know how to make it on air or off air. Like if the marketing team are doing the analysis of everything that Roy Keane does when he generates content, then they're saying, look, don't know how it's going to go from a football perspective. From a financial perspective, we're going to make a lot of money by putting Roy Keane in here. The whole world is going to tune in every day. It is a real life Truman show, and we're going to make a lot of money. Joel, I know you might not like this guy. He might not like you, or else you guys are actually going to hit it off straight away.
Yeah.
And it's going to make a lot of money for us. We will suddenly start filming everything, and we will have an Amazon documentary series ready to go the day after he leaves. We'll have a constant team editing non-stop, and everybody will watch every single second.
Wasn't there a situation where on Celebrity Big Brother they put in the formerly divorced couple into the house together? That would be the equivalent of Roy Keane and Harry Maguire going in together in this Amazon.
And did they know in advance how they agreed?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they had.
Right.
Your man from The Ordinary Boys, what was his name, Spencer something, he had actually met her on Celebrity Big Brother, and then years later they did a reunion show,
right,
where they threw them back in and they
after
had to be divorced. I think that's how it went. I could be completely making that up, but
good idea.
It's a fantastic idea. So if that can work, then Maguire and Roy Keane in the same documentary could certainly work, because that is the dominant thing here. Forget about the results. Forget about what this actually used to be. A football club, by the way, is what it used to be. This is all about feeding that beast and giving us what we want, because I guess that's all important right now for Manchester United.
What's the new news this morning? What's happening? Michael Carrick says him and Ole were simpatico and the team will play the same. They're going to do the same. They've just done that, got the manager sacked. Is that how you would address if you were advising Michael Carrick on his first day of press? It's like, I love Ollie, but we obviously need to change things up a little bit. The results haven't been good enough, and that's why the manager's left, and that's why I'm here. And so we've got to very quickly try and turn our season around.
Yeah, you've got to. That's what you should advise.
You're not distancing yourself too much from him, but you're distancing yourself just enough to say, I understand he got fired because the results are bad. Instead, look, it's always difficult in the press conference. Maybe he did say all that, but he's also like, Sol's going to be the same. We got on very well. That's why things worked so well for a while.
Yeah,
they worked so well. He got fired.
You do have to admire the dedication to the bit, which is everybody worships at the altar of Ole, and it doesn't even matter if he's not the manager anymore. That Carrick coming out and saying, yeah, we're very similar, we'll play in a very similar way. It's clearly not a hopeful note, I'd imagine, for a lot of Manchester United fans, but it certainly shows a lot of dedication to that bit. Like Harry Maguire again coming out yesterday and saying that we let the manager down, we got him sacked. I would suspect that if things suddenly turn around for Manchester United over the next little while, Solskjaer will actually get a lot of credit. The way people laughed at pundits in England last year for saying, Frank's got to take a lot of credit for the groundwork he laid at Chelsea. That Champions League trophy is his as much as Tommy Tuchel's. This will be the same situation this year with Solskjaer. Should they do anything, it's like you got to admire the groundwork he laid for this great explosion of success.
I've worked closely with Ollie for a long time. We have very similar beliefs. We did as players and we certainly do as coaches. Of course, I've got my own personality compared to Ollie, but of course, our style is very similar. That's why we worked together for so long and it went so well for a period of time. It did work so well for a period of time. Would you have said that there was a lot of personality about Michael Carrick? That would have been one of the things that I would have said. He doesn't really have... there was never his personality in the team.
No, he was a perfectly vanilla sort of midfielder who was very, very good.
I think I've always maintained I think Michael Carrick was overrated by all the Man United fans, always, and to this day. I thought he was overrated then. I still think he's overrated now. I think he was surrounded by some of the best players in world football at the absolute peak of their powers.
Yeah.
And so he was a water carrier for the rest of the team.
But I think the water carry for the rest of the team is the key point there. That I think
But I think a lot of other people could have done that too.
Maybe. I think that can be sometimes underplayed. I mean, you look at their current water carriers, they can't really carry water.
Well, if they were carrying water for peak Ronaldo, peak Rooney, peak Van Nistelrooy, I think those water carriers in midfield would be totally fine.
Fair point, I guess. But
if they had Evra and Vidic and Ferdinand, would Fred and McTominay suddenly look so bad?
Maybe not. Maybe
I don't
not.
think so.
I would still think that we maybe conceded wood from the trees to a point here, and that Carrick would be an upgrade. Carrick would be an upgrade on McTominay or Fred.
Carrick might be an extra 2 or 3% on those players, but is he like Xavi? Oh, he's the English Xavi. He is not the English Xavi. He is not the English Iniesta.
Well, but
he is not in that conversation. Well, the Man United fans at the time, then, and now, in retrospect, say, "Oh, Carrick, what a player! Oh, Jesus, he was so great."
I just think he was very, very good at being
Carrick,
doing the very basic things, which was
good
so
as
required.
Late stage Scholes, even.
So would you throw Darren Fletcher into that same conversation as Michael Carrick?
Yeah, two grand players.
Yeah.
2 grand players who were surrounded by much better. So John O'Shea. Like, John O'Shea obviously benefited from playing alongside really, really world-class players and had a brilliant career. Like, they had brilliant careers, but I don't think Michael Carrick... When did Carrick dominate a tournament? When was he the best player at a tournament? When did
Lampard or Gerrard do that? Like, I mean, Carrick, if you're going to talk tournaments, I mean, the fact that he was English probably diminishes his ability to dominate a tournament. There's a wider problem there. I just think the ability to be grand is underappreciated in that Manchester United team because they achieved so many great things.
No. Owen, if I put you in the team with Evra and Vidic and Ferdinand and whatever, was it mostly Gary Neville who would have played with him? And then you've also got... like someone else in midfield to do a fair bit of running for you, and you've got Rooney and Ronaldo or Tevez and Van Nistelrooy or whoever it was, Louise Saha, like whatever collection of players are around you, your job is just to pass it sideways. Yeah. Not like...
I'm not saying it was...
I think he could have done it.
He was clearly like...
He was good at it. He was very good at that.
He would struggle to make the best 9 players in that starting 11 for sure on any given week.
The best 13 players on that starting 11.
On the squad.
But the Man United players, the Man United fans will tell you that, he's a genius. Saw the game. He's a chess master. It's Gary Kasparov. It's like, okay, fair enough, whatever. Take it outside, do it in private, whatever you want.
I guess we'll see now. I mean, if you're bringing a Kasparov level of innovation to the game, you're probably going to be able to implement it from the sideline as much as from pulling the strings in midfield. So you could be eating humble pie in a couple of weeks. This will prove him as a great midfield maestro, basically, is what you're saying.
Maybe he's got a brilliant football brain, and maybe maybe they were right and I'm wrong. You know.
I'm eagerly awaiting the moment
we should
when
get
they
to
do prove you wrong.
The tempting bit, the bit that's making all the Man United fans suddenly feel like maybe this isn't a complete shit show, is the fact that the rumours growing that Pochettino might ditch Paris Saint-Germain in the middle of the season because he's had that big row with Leonardo. Now, he seems to have had a row with Leonardo very early on in the whole process, and there was some talk Leonardo might be on his way out 3 or 4 months ago, but that didn't happen. And they do have the greatest collection of talent in the attacking third of the field that anybody's ever assembled. It hasn't quite morphed into a team just yet, but they still have loads of great players. And they're still in the Champions League, and they're still obviously probably going to win the league. So it's not a terrible job that Pochettino has, but maybe Pochettino is putting this out there to win the power battle at Paris Saint-Germain. That's one potential. Maybe he's putting it out there because it's true. Maybe he's about to leave to come to Man United in the middle of the season because he knows that the Man United job is a 3.5-year job. Everybody gets it for a lot longer than they deserve, and he probably deserves to get it for a long time. So it's like, will I stay at Paris Saint-Germain, where I will get sacked at some point in the next 12 months unless I win the Champions League? And even then, if I win the Champions League, I'll get sacked the next season for not winning the Champions League. And what's my next job going to be? I'm now at the point where I can manage the super clubs. Which of the Spanish super clubs are going to be available to me? Not a whole heap. There's a limited list because of my my past playing. I mean, that's stupid, but it seems to be a thing. Maybe the Madrid job isn't something he wants right now because he looks at the playing staff there, although they played pretty well at the weekend. Good to see how they get on in the Champions League over the next couple of weeks. So I don't know. The Man United job right now, yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. Like, say if it doesn't go overly well, like you are leaving yourself open to the criticism, not only of it not going well at Manchester United, but the fact that you walked out on Paris Saint-Germain. Now, I accept if it's a situation where he gets sacked and he becomes a free agent essentially and goes to Manchester United, that there is definitely a part, I'm sure, of him thinking the optics of him walking out on this project wouldn't be great. I mean, like, where's your ambition as a manager? If you're managing Lionel Messi and you walk out on that project, granted, League On is League On.
Well, if you walk out on it for a crap job, grand. But if you walk out at it for Manchester United in crisis, your ambition is pretty high. Your ego is massive to the point where you're like, yeah, I can fix what Mourinho couldn't, what Solskjaer, club legend with like the most backing of any team in the history of football, what Van Gaal, one of the fathers of modern football, and well, David Moyes, he's okay, you know, but I'm going to beat all those and I'm going to win something for this team. And the next manager who wins the league for Manchester United has a job for 10 years. Like, pretty much. You're going to stay there for 10 years. And you can also start getting paid like the crazy money that Atletico Madrid pay.
Yeah, well, Pochettino's not going to be a Manchester United manager for 10 years. I think
if he wins the league title in the next 3 seasons, I guarantee he doesn't leave before 10 years. Because it's like, who else are you going to get, lads? Nobody.
Well, another manager will come along. I think Pochettino and Conte you can make a case that they burn brightly for a while and they're extremely intense. And
you'd have said the same about Klopp, and here we are 6 years in.
Fair, yeah, that you could definitely have said that about him, but I think this is on a whole other level. I think that they burned so brightly with Spurs under Maurizio Pochettino, and things went south so quickly. It was actually incredible how it happened. Conte maybe to a lesser extent, and maybe there's a sense of them just kind of moving on to the next project. Does he even want a 10-year gig?
Somebody had suggested Diego Simeone yesterday, and I went to look at Simeone's. We were talking about great players who become great managers, and I was looking back to see what his managerial record was before he got to Atletico. Do you know this? Because I didn't know, right? So pretty much from stopping playing, he went to Racing Club in Argentina for 4 months, from February 2006 to May 2006. He went to Estudiantes for 14 months, from May to December. Went to River Plate for 9 months. Went to San Lorenzo for a year. Went to Catania in Sicily. First time managing out of Argentina for 6 months to save them from relegation. Went back to Racing for 2 years, and then went to Atletico and has been there 10 years next month. So bounce, like real kind of, I've got no attention span, and then this job's for me, job for life.
Yeah, like, I guess there is that sense that managers are always looking to couple up with somebody that they want to stay with forever, and they eventually find it and they want to do that. It helps that Simeone is the best paid manager in the world, and that kind of is a little bit of an incentive for him to stay for a bit longer. But I take your point. That is a good case study in someone who can go from this sort of bounce around to a really dedicated manager and something that always feels fresh. Like in the situation of Klopp, for example, at no point did that ever feel stale. throughout his entire. How many years has Klopp in charge of Liverpool now at this point? 7 years at this stage. Like at no point has it ever felt like it's gone stale, because winning is this really exciting thing, and then you stop winning for 1 or 2 seasons, then you win again, and there is kind of a state of flux once you get your first couple of trophies. It's until you get there that really things can start to feel like they're going stale. So maybe, as you say, if Pochettino does somehow win a Premier League title with Manchester United in the next 2 or 3 seasons, that is the thing that kickstarts solidity and will kickstart a long period of time.
It'll be hard to leave if you turn that into a successful club. It'll be very hard to leave, because there are no other jobs really in world football that are as interesting and as exciting, and like it's right up there. That's why they should be able to get the best managers. It's mad that they've got like a catalogue of mediocrity and busted flushes to take this job in the post-Ferguson era. The amount of money that's sloshing around that is available to the next manager is huge. Get the best one. If Pochettino's head is being turned, you get on the plane, you bring him a Fabergé egg, you do whatever it takes, and you kidnap him. It's extraordinary rendition. You pay the money to PSG, who or you just get him to say it. I want the Man United job, and then PSG have to fire him.
Yeah.
Oh, that Man United job is the best job in world football. It's the Manchester United of jobs.
Well,
that's what he could
say.
say.
There you go. Yeah,
it's the Man United of jobs.
Every manager wants to manage Manchester United, and he could potentially pull a few strings. But I'm not.
First time ever that Kildare fans would know how the Paris Saint-Germain fans feel.
My concern, for this, if you're actually predicting this is going to happen, is not so much on him wanting to be Manchester United manager. It is him wanting to continue with Paris Saint-Germain. I just don't see the truly compelling reason for him to leave this project. The fact that it's been challenging, I would say, it's something that will keep someone like Mauricio Pochettino in the job and see this thing out. Like, I mean, you're going to quit. You're going to quit on Lionel Messi mid-season.
Yeah, because there's a possibility Messi quits. There's like a vague, there's a non-zero chance that Messi forces his way out of Christmas to go back and join.
Well, if that's the reality, if you're Pochettino and you think that's going to happen, then of course that can push you out of the club. But under the assumption,
who's in charge? And Mbappe wants to leave. It's a shit show at Paris Saint-Germain. It's obviously a shit show at Man United, but it'd be his shit show. He would be the boss.
Well, but it kind of is at PSG as well. So they're going to win Ligue 1 this season, and it's like, look at this shit show, and I won a trophy.
Yeah.
In this absolute calamity.
In fairness, that the absence of a trophy on his CV seems to be something that
that's it. You can tick that box this season. Manchester United will get him for whatever.
I'm sorry, but winning the League Cup does not count. Like Mourinho, Zlatan's counting the League Cup as 1-2 trophies. Now he did win a Europa League.
But is there a chance that United just wait? Is there a chance that it's going to cost him 10 million quid to get Pochettino now? It will cost him 5 million quid at the end of the season.
Well, the amount of
you get your season, Poch.
You get your season, but then we might
or
not
do you
qualify
get your trophy
for the Champions
rather?
League. What if we don't qualify for the Champions League? Then Poch's like, I'm not coming now. You didn't know your side of the bargain.
Well, no. Like, I mean, if they don't qualify for the Champions League, then Poch can come in and he's taking a club from an even lower base, and he's like, I got you back into the Champions League, and it's a win-win. You've also then potentially got a situation where at the end of the season, maybe Ronaldo leaves Manchester United, and
perfect.
Of course, Mr. Pochettino has already said that Messi is the best player in the world this season. He says there's no question. He said it's difficult to change your view on whether Messi or Ronaldo is better, but Messi is the best in the world.
Before I worked with him, I didn't realise just how amazing he was. The impact he has on the young kids at training. You should see how Marcus Rashford looks up to him. This will change Rashford's life forever. Easily done.
It would be funny if Pochettino showed up at Old Trafford and was like, you know what? After working with Lionel Messi, he's kind of crap. He's a stats patter.
Bad egg.
Bad
trainer.
Terrible human being. I'm like he's a shame on Argentina.
We need a sideline advising these managers what to say in their press utterances. It's 7:48. I'm going to tell you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. We'll come back to this, obviously, because the comments are rolling in. Look, let's not get sidetracked on Michael Carrick, right? I don't think he's great. You guys all think he's great. That's up to you. Your choice. You pay your money. Louise Galvin's going to join us at 8:05 to talk rugby. We've got sports pages at 8:25. We've got sports news at 8:45. Eoin Murphy, Kilkenny Hurler at 8:50. Graham Hunter at 9:10 to knock a bit of sense into us. And then Monday Night Rugby at 9:30. OTB AM with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. I can't believe you clowns on Friday are still rating me 3 out of 3.
I got dumped for Adrian. I think it's like an ironic rankings.
That's it. I agree. Shifty Lad says, couldn't agree more with Ger about Carrick. Sideways and back, very overrated, but Jesus, don't say that around these Sky pundits. Yubz says, I've got to agree with you on Carrick. He was well overrated as a player. Mark says, Carrick falls into the Dunphy quote of, was a good player, not a great player. I would agree. He's a good player, not a great player. Jack Reaper says, disagree on Carrick point. You don't keep your place in that United players only being able to pass sideways and backwards. Very underrated, Carrick. He is not underrated. He is like one of the most highly rated midfielders of his generation, despite the fact that there were actually world-class midfielders in his generation. Paul says, when did United fans say he was a genius? Can we at least start the argument at a half-truth? Who have they had in midfield that was better since? Anyone who's played with him said he was excellent.
See, I kind of agree with Paul there to a point. I don't think anybody did profess him to be a genius. I think there's just this great adoration because he's like one of us.
My point is,
he is mediocre like all of us.
He is so underrated that he is like one of the most overrated footballers. It's like, oh, this guy, nobody appreciates his excellence. Excellence. Like, yeah, okay. He was like a middle of the road passer, good engine, some game smarts, but like grand. He was grand. That's the point. Anyway, let's not get... Carrick the player will have no impact on Carrick the manager. That's the point about this Steven Gerrard. Like, what's the latest thing Steven Gerrard has done? What do you think he's done? He's got to the training ground. What has he banned on?
Yeah, he has banned ketchup, which
mayonnaise.
Oh, he's banned mayonnaise as well.
And ketchup. Yeah,
like
fizzy drinks, because it's a high performance, high aspiration. They turned Rangers around, and they're going to do the same thing here.
Do you think there's like a black market for ketchup sachets at the moment that we could possibly get into? Nice little earner there on the side, meeting footballers around the back of the training lot, selling them little sachets, and like, I don't know. Gerrard genius is basically what you're saying.
Well, what happens
after one game?
What happens is, and John Giles is always aware of this, is a new manager comes in and criticises the old regime subtly enough. It's like, oh, they didn't do this that I'm going to do. The team aren't fit enough. The medical staff wasn't good enough, whatever it is. And that's not what Gerrard's doing here. It's more subtle. It's, the dietitians, they weren't on it. They just didn't have that elite mindset that I have as a serial winner who, of course, didn't actually win a league title.
I'm all for that. Like, I'm sure Xavi has replaced the ketchup at Barcelona as well, but he's gone that one step further and was like, too many injuries to this club. Medical staff, you're all fired, and he brings over his entire medical team from Al Sadd.
Did he?
I was just reading that this morning, which is quite the step. I mean, that is how you lay down a marker. That's how you. So if there's actual success in the near future for Barcelona, I think that's something you could point to and say, well, that was a pretty seismic change, rather than, I was going to say Arsene Wenger small changes, but actually didn't he give his players like vitamin tablets and all that sort of stuff, or whatever they were, to completely overhaul the future of the club. And
it totally worked. Tonight, Villarreal against Manchester United, 5:45. Young Boys against Atalanta at 8 o'clock in that group. Chelsea against Juventus at 8 o'clock. Malmo against Zenit, also at 8 o'clock in that group as well. I think things are pretty straightforward for Chelsea at this point. Roman Abramovich is back in England after a long period of time where he wasn't travelling to England, but he's not going to the game tonight. He's got a do. Got a bit of a do on instead. So people ask him, what would the Keane thing look like? Could Keane manage Manchester United between now and the end of the season? Is it possible? What would it look like? How would it manifest itself? What would Harry Maguire's agent be, or sources close to Harry Maguire, what would they be leaking to the papers when it was announced? Because there's not going to be a 2 or 3 day warm up to this. It's just going to be like bang. Keane's going to arrive in one day and go, I'm back.
First game, they get smashed. Harry Maguire goes to Twitter to apologise, and he's like, I'm sorry for absolutely nothing. I'm sorry because our manager's shite. I'm sorry, our manager's pathetic. He's got absolutely no experience. Where the hell has he managed? And just proceeds to kick him until he's down after coming on for 2 minutes in a 2-0 defeat to Newcastle at Old Trafford. That's the sort of future we have. Like, I mean, it's a very, very entertaining fantasy to think about. Roy Keane at Manchester United right now. It would, if you were writing Dream Team, this is the sort of narrative you would write. You would indulge yourself to the point where it's ridiculous and would be entertaining, and everybody would be tuning in for the next episode. What do you think? Like, it's just so beyond the idea of being reasonable. This idea of Roy Keane there, that you can't allow yourself to think about it too long.
Was Gary Neville's time at Valencia so shit that he can't get it?
Yeah.
Is it? Was it?
Maybe Manchester United are so unaware of what that would do to maybe the image of the club, that there is this, like, I mean, I don't think Solskjaer necessarily, his legacy will be overly negative as the years go by, but definitely it feels that there was this pally nature to the analysis of Solskjaer and how Solskjaer got in, this attachment to nostalgia, this connection to the past that I guess paved the way for Solskjaer to come back in. Any of those two names that you mentioned, any of the Sky lads going in, is like that is just that times 10. At least Solskjaer had some degree of managerial experience that wasn't a complete catastrophe behind him. Now, in fairness, Keane does have that as well, but it was ages ago. I can't believe we're even talking about the possibility of either of those two names being in the mix for Manchester United job. It's just absolutely beyond reason to think that they're in the mix.
They're not in the mix. The whole point is they're absolutely not in the mix for the job, right? Because you need if Pochettino agrees to come, but says I want to see you at the end of the season, which is the most likely outcome here is that actually they do a backdoor deal with somebody like Pochettino. It becomes an open secret that he's the new manager, but Manchester United appoint an interim manager in the meantime. At that stage, you'd have to say the most likely outcome is that Carrick gets it until the end of the year, or they put Fletcher in instead because Carrick...
They got them mixed up.
Whatever. You know, it's possible that they're like, oh, we said that we were going to get an interim, you're going to be the interim, and we want to give you this experience over the next while, and we feel like Carrick is too closely associated with Solskjaer, and actually we just got beaten by Villarreal. So I'd say a lot hinges on tonight's game, but the most likely outcome is that they do a deal with Pochettino and Pochettino agrees to come at the end of the season for the point of you're talking about the dilettante nature of it, and actually it would cost too much money, whereas in the summer they probably think they can do a deal for nothing. And maybe Zidane is lined up already at that point to take over PSG for whatever. So you can see how the end of the season is better for everybody. In that scenario, you get an interim manager where they decide they don't want Fletcher tainted by what happens. They want somebody to come in and make sure that the players don't slack off. The list of candidates is Steve Bruce. This is like Hollywood Squares. It's Steve Bruce. Arsene Wenger came up yesterday. I was suggesting, could Ferguson do it for like 6 months? Could he do it for 6 months? He probably could. You can't give it to Giggsy anymore. He's off the register.
You can invite him to a corporate box.
I mean, it's not a great look, but they're still doing it. You've got Mark Hughes. And what's behind door number 6?
Oh no! How are Manchester United in this position?
Because they don't have a well-oiled football department. In fairness, getting Darren Fletcher in at this age means that in 15, 20 years' time, they're going to have like a slew of people who are involved in football and who know football. And by all accounts, Fletcher's an absolute, he is genuinely supposed to be a football genius. So I think that there's room and opportunity there for that football department to grow. But they needed to do that 20 years ago and they didn't, right? Because they had the monoculture where it was ruled by a dictator, and they've tried to replicate that afterwards, and none of the dictators who came afterwards were anywhere near as good as Alex Ferguson. Funnily enough, it turned out he was one of a kind. So, in that scenario, it's not completely ridiculous to think that you could put any of these people in. I would say the safest pair of hands is Hughes, but his football management, not great.
And I appreciate that you caveated that by saying in this scenario it's not totally unreasonable. But let's just remove that scenario. In reality, that is a ridiculous situation that they've completely generated from themselves.
The alternative was to keep Solskjaer until the end of the season and then get Pochettino.
It's like saying in this scenario where time travel is possible, it's not ridiculous that we end up in the year 1971. Of course, the conditions you've created in that hypothetical are bonkers.
No, it's the opposite of that.
That Roy Keane is a possibility.
This is exactly what they did. This is how badly Man United has been managed. They didn't create a time machine.
I accept, but it is.
They walked themselves into the scenario where this is actually a real scenario.
What I would say is closer to the truth is another scenario they've created, which was just handing out these contracts last month to the likes of Kieran McKenna, Mike Phelan. Like that was bad business, and they're now going to have to be either paid off or given a new role.
It wasn't bad business because what a month ago they thought that they were sticking with Solskjaer. So if they didn't give them those contracts at that point, Solskjaer would have realised, oh, you're firing me. But then the results might have been bad. It's so badly managed. The football side of the club is so badly managed that scenario that I've outlined to you, it's the alternatives are get Pochettino now.
Yeah.
Get Brendan Rodgers now, or appoint an interim manager. And your interim managers are Fletcher, it's Michael Carrick, or it's one of that collection of people who will do the job for 6 months knowing they can't get the job. Mm-hmm. And who can do that? For Roy Keane, it would be perfect for his career and his
Of course
life.
it would. It'd be perfect for Roy Keane. Of course it
It'd
would.
be like absolutely. It would be dream scenario. You get to go in. He would like get to physically manhandle some of those players, and the content will be unbelievable. So whatever the money they lose from not qualifying for the Champions League, they make back in content and revenue from advertising and sponsorship.
It's the Roy Keane and Harry Maguire Roadshow, sponsored by Gazprom. That is how they make their money next year, and I'm here for it. Zlatan's in the papers. We were supposed to do this later on, but it feels perfect to do it now. Zlatan's been interviewed by Donald McRae. Donald McRae interviews are always excellent, so you gotta read this. It's in the Guardian today. You'll get it free online. Considering the ongoing travails of United, who remain in thrall to the Ferguson years, Zlatan says they talk too much about the past. When I went there, I said, I'm here to focus on the present and to make my own story, but when you have too much, it becomes like a loop. You have to think about the present, or you should go to a hospital and clean your head. Manchester United. Who would be the hospital? Roy Keane is the hospital in this scenario. Is the loop not Michael Carrick? Is Michael Carrick not just Groundhog Day? Zlatan has it. He knows the truth. They talk too much about the past. Now, Roy Keane's obviously the past, but he's also, in this instance, a hospital. All I can see is that scene in The Dark Knight when your man, the Two-Face, who's about to become Two-Face, is sitting in the bed, and there's a nurse, and the nurse turns around to slowly reveal himself to be Joker. It's Harry Maguire sitting in the bed, and in his PPE is Roy Keane slowly turning around, and it's a very, very grim realisation that his career is over. This is...
Or rescued. Or rescued.
Roy Keane blows up the hospital on his way out. It's exactly how it goes. And you know what? It will be dramatic, as you say.
What if Roy Keane's message only works with good quality players? Man United, we all keep saying they've got good quality players. That squad's too good to blah 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 blah. Be good to see it, but maybe they respond to him in a way that Ipswich couldn't.
Look, I mean, Roy Keane will only ever work again as manager in a short, sharp burst, probably. This will be a short, sharp burst. I'm going to entertain you here. Let's go along with this. Then you know what? It's a great idea. From a neutral standpoint, from a media standpoint, it's an absolutely fantastic idea. An absolutely fantastic idea.
From a neutral standpoint, therefore, it is also a fantastic idea.
Exactly. From a Manchester United, the only ones who stand to lose for Manchester United appointing Roy Keane as manager are Manchester United. So
do they stand to lose that much? Could he be any worse than Carrick? I don't think so. Carrick says he thinks he's got a slightly different personality from Solskjaer. I'm not sure we've seen it. I'd say they seem very, very similar in terms of temperament. They both seem like lovely men.
What you want from a new manager is will there be an urge within the dressing room to try and impress this new guy? Are you going to get that from Michael Carrick over the next little while? Probably not. But then again, maybe he's just a better manager than Solskjaer. That's another thing that we don't know, and maybe that will actually be the reason why
it's unlikely he could be any worse. Solskjaer was like the very minimum level. Daniel Harris said that Neil Warnock couldn't do any worse than the situation at the moment. I mean, and that's true. It feels that way.
I didn't listen to yesterday's show, and it just seems that I missed the greatest list of candidates produced of all time. I really wish I was in yesterday.
King Arthur USA says Poch will never win with United. He was a failure with Spurs, and Leicester won the league that season when Spurs blew up. Give it to Rooney. So we did talk about Rooney as well. Rooney did a great post-match interview after they'd just beaten Bournemouth to get to 0 points, having been deducted 18. And he in fairness had done his media training. His practice line was, I'm going to be at Derby. We've got a really great bunch of players, really fought today, and I'm going to be here until I'm told otherwise. And then immediately afterwards, Sky cut to Wayne Rooney would find it very difficult. A reporter saying Wayne Rooney would find it very difficult to turn down the interim Man United job if they offered it to him.
Yeah.
So obviously someone within the camp was like amazing juxtaposition. And of course Wayne Rooney, because it would be like getting him out of jail at Derby. It was like, I did a great job at Derby, got back to 0 points, and then I got this job for 6 months, and then I retired. I realised I'm a good pundit. I'm going to have the crack being a pundit, or maybe I'll be a coach. I don't know. Right. Carrick was actually a very polarising player, says Connor, among the fan base for years, and only really became appreciated around 2011, 2012 when his song took off. Nobody ever said he was on Xavi or Iniesta's level. Fergus says Carrick, like Deschamps, wasn't brilliant but necessary. I mean, you definitely need a midfielder who's going to get the ball off the defence and pass it back to the defence. Paul says get Cantona in. Let's just throw this season to entertainment if they're hiring someone next season anyway. David May is assistant manager. Get it done, Ed, says Paul. David May's hanging around, all right. Does a Man United podcast, so he'd be available. Right, we haven't even got to Arsenal. We'll get to Arsenal a little bit later on. OTB AM with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. Back in a sec.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Arsenal and Irish fans won't want to miss our next Cadbury FC roadshow.
We're going behind the scenes with Arsenal invincible Robert Pires and Gunner star and Ireland captain Keane McCabe. We'll also be joined by former Arsenal S&C coach, Ireland rugby legend Gerry Flannery.
It's all with thanks to Cadbury FC and their club partnerships, granting you behind the scenes access at the Premier League's biggest clubs.
Coming soon to OTB Sports social channels.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Right, 8:05 this morning here on OTB AM. Your comments are coming in thick and fast. There's a lot of love for Michael Carrick, the player, and that's fair enough. If you're a Man United fan, he was there on loads of great days. But that's the crack.
Are you sure you're not like misremembering Michael Carrick and the attitude towards him as some sort of borderline ironic, as in like
No.
Iniesta?
No. I definitely had long, boring arguments with Man United fans at the time about how there were some, not many, who would have said that he was the perfect combination of Keane and Scholes, in that he had Keane's energy and he had Scholes passing, and so therefore, it was a small minority, and I don't really want to. I don't want to indulge those people too much, but I had those conversations, and they're constantly like. I remember one guy texted me 4.5 years after we'd last had a conversation after Carrick got man of the match, and they probably beat West Ham 4-0 or something, and the text was, "Still think Carrick shit." And that was it. Hadn't had any conversation with this person in 4.5 years, but he waited until then, until he was a man of the match after in one game. I was like, I gotcha now.
Yeah, I actually need to go back to a few people who got onto me over the course of the summer for a couple of slow chart takes last season. Somebody got into me over the course of the summer being like, you said last year Hasenhüttl is an unquestionably better manager than Solskjaer. Where are you at now with that take? I should get back to him actually and be like, who's still in a job, mate?
I mean, I actually...
When he did beat Hasenhüttl 9-0, let's not forget, but I'm going to forget about that.
You would have seen Hasenhüttl linked with the job at various places as well. I mean, look, we'll see. 8:07 this morning. If you want to get in touch, 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Wherever you're watching in the world, we'd love to hear from you. You can get us on YouTube. The best place to listen to us these days is, of course, the OTB Sports app. And you can listen to us just as a radio show. We've got a live, continuous feed of top quality sports content all day on OTB Sports Radio. All you got to do is tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio, and you should be okay. If you want to get in touch with us, of course, we'd love to hear from you. Now, time for us to turn our attention back to rugby. I'm delighted to say Louise Galvin is back with us. Louise, how are you getting on?
Good, and yourselves?
Yeah, pretty good. We're trying to temper our levels of excitement, to find reasons not to be too excited after, well, really quite a swashbuckling trio of games where we never looked in any danger of losing any of the matches. We were clearly the better side in the 3 games. We've got strength in depth, and it's all pretty rosy. So what should we do here, Louise? Should we get carried away?
No, absolutely not. Don't get carried away. It's a job well done. It's definitely an affirmation of all those things that you just said. We can play with different styles, I think, to win games, which is another point to add in there, because how we played against Japan versus Argentina was quite different in terms of how they defended, I suppose, and how we broke them down. But definitely the idea of having a little bit more strength and depth, to have, such young players coming in. And I think the main word I have for them is dynamism. They're just so dynamic. Like from the last day, obviously, the likes of Ryan Baird coming in, Dan Sheahan, I thought they were phenomenal and really took their opportunity. And it's like this new breed of rugby player that's coming up in terms of their position and their conditioning and their kind of mindset of, I'm not just going to run over the top of someone. They all have, great hands and that ability to find a soft shoulder, low centre of gravity, take a step. And, the work rate there is phenomenal as well. And then when you hear kind of slightly older members of the group, the more experienced members of the group, like Peter Mahoney using the word fun in press conferences, you're like, whoa, we're onto something good here. But then we got to, settle ourselves, because I think for all Northern Hemisphere sides, it's a case of keeping in mind that the Southern Hemisphere sides are jaded, worse than they ever are coming over in November. The effect of COVID on their tours has been massive. And I think Ledesma really touched on that as well in terms of the Argentinian side, the fact none of them even played their club rugby in their own continent. So we have to kind of take that into account as well. So all in all, we've done what we needed to do, but it's still, 2 years out from a World Cup. Its position aren't at their peak, like maybe the Northern Hemisphere sides are coming into the start of the season. So we're in good stead, but nothing to get too carried away with yet.
And I think especially on that front is the way and the shape in which the Southern Hemisphere teams came up to the Northern Hemisphere, that I think there is maybe in the aftermath of the All Blacks game a bit of a caution because of what happened in 2018. But as you say, it's not even the 1 year out from the World Cup scenario from the last cycle, it's the 2 years out from the World Cup scenario, because 2017 Ireland played South Africa and smashed them. I think at halftime Brent Pope was saying this is the worst performance Ireland have ever come up against, or maybe he didn't say that, but it was something quite heavy and quite on that level. And 2 years later, obviously they're World Cup champions, so that is the level that they can turn to, as much as we need to temper our own expectations.
Yeah, and it'll be a warning sign to them as well about how strong the Northern Hemisphere teams are. And it is across the board. That's one thing when it's Six Nations, we're not the only form team. Like France are, oh my goodness, like the game was phenomenal on Saturday night. Like Wales they'll right off that first game. They obviously didn't have a lot of their internationals available for the first game against New Zealand, but even just to grind out that tight win. Similarly with England, Eddie Jones, we delighted. So, the Northern Hemisphere teams, they're all doing pretty well. But we can't all do well and be happy come the end of the Six Nations either. But I suppose it's a good starting point. And I think what I like is it wasn't that, we scored a load of tries against Japan and we scored a load of tries against a jaded Argentinian side, but we just resorted to kicking a few penalties and grinding out a win against New Zealand. It's how we won the games, and it's also who we had playing that we had a relatively settled team, certainly in the pack. But we weren't relying on Johnny has to stay on the field. Now, if Joey didn't have such a good performance the last week, that might still be a big, I suppose, asterisk beside it. And it probably still is a little bit. I'm not sure if Harry Byrne really is third in line there, whether it was just more exposure to the whole November window for him. And obviously, even with Joey's, injury concerns, Joey can have them as well. So we definitely do need to even hammer home who is our third choice there, whether it is Harry Byrne or, obviously he's put Jack Carty in ahead of the next guys in line to, Billy Burns as the next position. So that's probably still a bit unsure. But like the competition for places is phenomenal. Even when Craig Casey came on the last day, like the zip he had of the ball, he certainly didn't look out of place. Bearing in mind he's coming in behind a pack that's going forward, and he's probably 20 points up already when he's coming on. So all these things have a part to play in the whole context of it, but still he does not look out of place. If I'd see him come on, if he was on the bench, half an hour into that Welsh game, I wouldn't be shaking my boots. I'd be like, all right, let's see what he's made of now, but I wouldn't be overly concerned either.
Yeah, that's the level we're at now, where you would hope that there is enough strength and depth for them to be able to withstand almost any injury crisis. But we kind of got through almost until the warm-up of the Argentina game, through these three games, thinking actually we've managed our resources very well here, and we're not really missing any of our players. We do know from World Cups that by the time you come out of the group stages, when you reach the quarterfinals, it's at that point that you take a look at your playing stocks and they tend to be diminished. Is there any hope maybe that we're playing a slightly less abrasive game and that I think Ger. I think even the context that we're making, we still had a huge amount of rucks the last year. I think we're over the 100 mark on ruck. I think we'd retained 103 and lost 3 or something, which is an incredible stat as well. But we're not just looking for collisions, we're looking for soft shoulders. So even the manner of those rucks, they're just a little bit less abrasive. It's not all the time, but it's a lot. We're trying to come in at different angles. We're not just trying to create a ruck nearly for the sake of it and retain the ball and suck numbers in. And then obviously we're not trying to do it all the time. When we get an opportunity, we're trying to offload that ball out of contact, even in quite tight situations. For example, when Matter got his yellow card, there was just a 2 or 3 knock-ons there in that contact zone that I don't think we would have seen in the Joe Schmidt era. It's just this idea of keep the ball moving, keep changing the point of attack. It doesn't have to be 100 rucks or 120 rucks a game.
So hopefully that would help a certain amount. But also I think it's a good sign that, look, those injuries happened in the run up to the game, to Henderson and to Jack Cohn, and even the likes of Nick Timoney, who's not even in the squad, is up in Belfast, comes down, ends up thinking he's just warming up, then realising, then getting 20 minutes of game time, and does particularly well as well. So the more of these players, I think it's 52 players that Alan Farrell has capped in total, and the more these that are kind of exposed to his system, that whole defensive system, what Mike Cat wants, then the better. Because we can see when the intervals are playing, we do have relative strength and depth in the country, but it's at club level. Like, it's whenever an Irish squad is announced, there's always like, what about this guy? What about this guy? Who's generally playing well, playing week in, week out for Ulster, Munster, Connacht, whoever. Because, you know, the Leinster lads are all selected. But you know, it's exposing them. There's no point launching them, and then they need that exposure to the camps and some international game time. So even that 20 minutes the last day has been invaluable for Nick Timoney.
I know we don't know the ins and outs of Andy Farrell's contract, but there's definitely a belief that Irish rugby is incentivised at various different levels to win prize money in the Six Nations. It's very hard for him, therefore, not to pick his best team in those games. You know, you manage your resources as best you can, and we can play some kind of a second string against Italy because Italy have fallen off the face of the earth. But wouldn't it be great if we were able to give Craig Casey and Balakoon and Timoney good, meaningful game time in Paris and at Twickenham, so they're aware exactly what that experience is like? Because there's a good chance that we're going to need those players in key moments in one of the 3 or 4 massive World Cup games that are coming. But if the first time they get those big moments are in Paris against France in a World Cup quarter-final, then there's a more chance they're going to fail if they don't have any experience of that before.
Yeah, and again, it's just like you kind of framed the question in the beginning, like, what is the goal? Is it positioning out of Six Nations? I mean, there are a few, if you tell them officially, they'll say it's both, or is it World Cup quarter-final stage? Yeah, I think yes and no, because as well, we've had a slight change in the guard. Like, let's say you're talking about Nick Timoney, like CJ Stander's gone. So as much as Jack Conan has all of a sudden come out and has become our out now first choice number 8 up until probably, was it halfway through last season, or not even, maybe just excuse me, after he was selected for the Lions and started for the Lions, we probably didn't know exactly who was going to be in that position. So I'm not sure how many times Jack Cohn has gone and started away at Twickenham and away in France, and does he need that level of exposure just as much as Nick Timoney does, when he probably is going to be the starting? If we had to pick a team now, he's going to be the guy who's starting in a World Cup. Obviously, so much changes in 2 years. So I think it might be more a case of, okay, if a guy's out of form a little bit, who was a guaranteed starter, if he's after picking up a knock, now we know these guys are there ready to step up. But I wouldn't necessarily rotate for those games, because you still need your best players exposed to those challenges year in and year out. And like Six Nations, as much as our June tour is very important, and our November test very important, and our club rugby and our European Cup are, like, away to France and England are going to be the 2 biggest games of the year. They're going to carry the most weight for next season. So you still want your best guys exposed to that and getting used to playing with each other as well. Like, I think that was another reason he kind of didn't want to change the pack too much. And the thing is, we don't have, like, even the fact Andrew Porter now has gone to Lucid, and we've Ronan Keller in there. These aren't guys with 30 caps in their position either. So I think we do need to have had a really good November series, but now we're going to see something different with them. So they need to continue to work on their balance. And, like, do we know where our best second row necessarily is either? Henderson obviously has had a few injuries since coming back from he did the rest from the Lions and then picked up injuries. So is it Ryan Byrne? And then when you've guys like a phenomenal freak like Ryan Baird breathing down their neck as well. I think these guys are going to be wanting their own game time against this French and English, those games particularly. Yeah.
Bundiaki's 31. He'll be 33 the time World Cup rolls around. That's fine, isn't it? 33 is the kind of outer limit. But anything after that, with the exception of Sexton, where like the age profile is reasonable, I suppose, is the point I'm making. That there's nobody really you can see being shunted out of the team.
No, I suppose Keith Earls is 34 now, but I mean, from listening to obviously his incredible interviews recently, like he says, he's as fast now as he was back then. And I wouldn't rule out that he'll still be there, but I think his role, as we can see even in the November Test series, might be changing a little bit. But I wouldn't say or is definitely gone because he'll be 36. I just think the type of person and player he is, and the fact that he's such a utility cover now, I wouldn't rule him out. But after, besides Earls and Sexton, I think, yeah, you're probably looking at that age profile, all right.
I guess it then comes down to when some of those guys need rest, Louise, as opposed to when the management staff actually want to rotate. And if you're looking at the rhythm of the season, it may actually come down to that tour in New Zealand next summer where a couple of those guys may be rested, even though it's probably one of the toughest places, if not the toughest place to go in rugby.
Yeah, maybe that's where the likes of Craig Casey gets his tour time, or Brian Baird, or Dan Sheehan, that they get more exposed to these top level guys, because you can be damn sure Kiwis are going to be absolutely baying for us down there. So that's where maybe you get more of your opportunity to try and blood these guys a little bit more. But it's very difficult to say obviously now, because it completely depends on how the season goes. But if Johnny Sexton's still going well, he's not going to put his hand up and say, I'm okay for the June series this year when they're going down to New Zealand. I mean, fair enough, last summer it was, Japan and USA was definitely a good opportunity to bring in some of the fringe players and see what they're like at international duty. But there's not a lot of guys going to be putting their hand down for this tour.
What do you want to see from Carberry then over the course of the next few weeks in particular? If we forget about the Six Nations and what he's going to do in the Ireland shirt, there was questions not only about him on the international level, but actually about a starting team in Munster over the past couple of months. So what does he need to do to kick on from a pretty successful November over the short term?
Yeah, I think he kicked pretty well, which even his start of the season with Munster, he wasn't as reliant off the boot maybe as he'd like to have been. Definitely seemed a bit ring rusty. Like, you wouldn't say Carberry was necessarily picked on form for his form against Munster, but more on what we know he can achieve, and kind of had that asterisk of knowing he has been carrying injuries and probably needed a little bit more game time as well to get up to speed. So I think it's to bring that Irish form and that confidence. Like, he looked confident the last day. He looked heads up. I actually thought his defence is really good as well. Argentina tried to run up over the top of him a few times off a few lineouts. And
yeah.
Fair enough, he had a back row coming in, usually, Van der Fleer and Mahoney to help him out. But he was making his first up tackle. Mightn't be sitting them back on their backside, but
the technique was good though.
It's not a soak tackle. I think he made 8 tackles in total in the game, and he looked pretty robust as well. Like, he didn't look like at any stage, I don't think he ever got any medical attention during the game. And the cool to see him going to full back as well, just so we're having a look at that kind of second playmaker role. So I think with Munster, it's just to actually bring that confidence back in. Hopefully he'll have quite a strong pack in front of him as well that are pushing on. But I suppose on the flip side, if he isn't, how he manages those sorts of games as well. But it's good to see, like, he's kicking out of hand, his identification of space, that was definitely up. Once or twice he took it to the line. He identified that there's 2 forwards in front of him, glided through a gap, the show and go. So we saw a lot of the tricks that we're used to seeing from Joey, along with the solid consistency that we want from our 10s. So I think just to bring that form back to Munster, and probably even to bring a little bit of leadership with them as well, because when you're coming back from injury and you've had a couple of injuries back to back over the years, and you've been away then in international duty, mightn't be as hard for, even if you're an international player, to boss your provincial team around. But he really wants him to come back and kind of take ownership and boss Munster around the park now, and just even, be solid when he needs to be solid, and really back to expressing himself, because that was his point of difference when he first burst onto the scene, is that he could play this really nice running game. He took the ball to the line, he identified space, he did all these other things, as opposed to maybe someone who's really solid, really distributing 10 like a Ross Byrne, who, you could say he's had a hard time with it as well, but it's a completely different type of player. Joey, his point of difference is that kind of running game, that kind of heads up ability to see what's in front of him and just react to it. So I think we're starting to see more of that. So to bring that into Munster definitely would be huge for the province.
Yeah, and now that we've kind of got a good idea of what the Mike Cat attack looks like, as a result of what we've seen in November. Which of the four provinces most closely resembles that? Like, is Carbery playing for Munster at the moment really good preparation for him when he does put on the green of Ireland again next year?
Yeah, like I think Munster, like with Larkin as well, it looks like they're trying to play more expansive at times, but I think Leinster's probably, to answer the start of the question, like they're probably the team that most resembles because they can win it both ways. They can play with and with a lot of integration of their backs and forwards, and they can play through their pack. Whereas I think with Munster, we're still looking at it. Maybe it's like Alan Farrell last season, where we're kind of wondering, we're getting a lot of positive sound bites, but wondering where we're actually going. Where there's a lot of resorting back to box kicking and playing behind our pack and playing territory at times. And then there's games where they're excellent, but they've flattered to deceive a little bit at the start of this season as well. So I think Leinster are probably the team that's the most comfortable, and that's because they have been in that position of being the best team in the country, one of the best teams in Europe for nigh on 10 years now. So they have that confidence, they have that, I suppose, level of depth within their squad that know how to play that way. But yeah, I think with Joey at the helm, Munster can play a little bit more like that. It's just they need a lot more things to click than just Joey coming back and playing that way.
We should talk about what you think of what's happening in the women's game at the moment. Ciara Griffin retiring, obviously a fellow Kerry woman. She put in one of those all-time great performances that you really want somebody to put in at the end of a career. She's 27. It seems like a shame for Irish rugby that somebody that young is being lost to the game, and it seems lost to the game like, there's no set plan. She hasn't announced what she's going to do next. You feel like if everything was going well, the IRFU would have stepped in somehow to make sure that their totemic leader was somehow being kept around, and it just feels like something is wrong at the moment with Irish women's rugby.
Yeah, look, first on Junior, she's phenomenal. Phenomenal athlete, phenomenal leader in person. And to be honest, I was at the game the last day, and it's rare I've seen a rugby game so influenced by one person. They had a red card from 30 minutes into the game, 12-3 down against not a fantastic Japanese team. We're obviously struggling for form, for performance. I know we got 2 results over this window, but that's literally what we got, was 2 results, not 2 necessarily performances. And it was kind of a strange, almost like a purgatory, knowing Adam Griggs is still there and Greg McWilliams is sitting in the stand. But what Junior did was phenomenal. I know a lot of people say, she scored 2 tries, but it's actually all over the field. Her defence, her attack was, if you saw a Japanese player being driven back, her scrum cap popped up. She was just hell-bent on putting a massive performance in, and she was phenomenal. So I'm delighted for her with that. I think it was always her plan to retire after the World Cup, and obviously when that didn't happen, she had to reassess. And look, it's difficult. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about amateurism versus professionalism. The squad are in camps a lot, which is always obviously based up in Abbottstown. And with COVID as well, it's so difficult for Caoimhin to work as a primary teacher in Tralee with bubbles. And, she's got married, building a house. And she's such an all or nothing person. I can see why you look at it and say, this is physically impossible to spend so much of my time up and down the road to Dublin, when actually I want to start being at home a little bit more, and I've given an awful lot of my time. And the other thing is at rugby, I see a lot of people retire through injury, and she's such an abrasive player in one of those positions. It's pretty good that she can walk out of it in her own terms as well, and after such a fantastic performance. I suppose one side of it is, you can have all the best plans to retire, and if things are going well, and if you're particularly happy and the setup is good and the squad are in a good place, and you are that age and you can keep going, that's when minds get changed. But that wasn't the case. So I do think what's happened over the last few weeks hasn't had maybe a direct impact in that her decision was made. But if things were on the flip side much better, we all know, as whatever sport you're playing, like, I'll give it one more year, I'll give it another year because I'm enjoying it so much. So yeah, I suppose that's what I'd say about that. And that's not coming from Junior at all. This is more kind of my own kind of thoughts on it, that if you're about to retire and you're like, but actually I can never go back, really, this is as good as it gets, and I can manage to give one year, the body can. But if you have a decision made and there's nothing there to really change your mind, then it is sad that way.
Yeah.
And listen, she owes the jersey. absolutely nothing. That's for sure. She certainly, there's a bit of a cliche, leaving in a better place, but if ever someone has done it, it's Junior.
Your perspective on this is really interesting because you came into the setup through the sevens, having watched the success of the 15s team, and then ultimately end up joining the 15s team as well. Did we just go about things the wrong way? Was there an original sin in separating the sevens and the 15s and kind of having a twin track approach and almost separating those two groups, or was that the only available option for the IRFU? It just hasn't worked out for whatever reason. What's your instinct about where we are now and what the seeds of this, when were they sown?
Yeah, look, I think the original separation was done back in about 2013 when I believe John Skerr would have been managing sevens, and it would have been around the end of Philip Doyle's time. Well, not the end, he was obviously there 2013, 2014. And there's a separation of sorts, and it was very much coming up to 2014 World Cup, and the 15 squad was going well, but the sevens was kind of getting off the ground. And then Anthony Eddie came in as sevens coach and head director of women's rugby and sevens rugby around the, I think, December 2015 mark. And following Goose's retirement, Tom Tierney came in, and there was this kind of, I suppose, this idea that you're contracted for sevens so that you are paid not an awful lot, but and for that as well, you have to move up to Dublin and leave whatever job and life you have for whatever part of Ireland you live. And the ultimate goal was to qualify for the Olympics, and then you played and qualified to get as a core team in the World Series and you Sevens World Cup as well. So it was a pretty full-on calendar once you're on all those tickets. And I suppose there were players that were always crossing over and back along. I think even to take a step back, there are some people saying if you play sevens, you shouldn't play 15s and vice versa. Every country in the world is doing it. So I don't agree with that for 1 second. England brought 4 players back in from the GP squad to play in the November International Series, and they don't necessarily need them. We can see how dominant they are. But it's how you do it that's important. And actually coming up to this window, it was done the best because there was no sevens games. Actually, the first World Series is on this weekend against Dubai since January 2020. So the girls that were, I suppose, spearheaded to be involved or earmarked, they have been in for the last year or so, apart from, I think Lucy Mulhall was brought in a bit later for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why, to be honest. She should have been brought in earlier. So they were actually fully immersed. And when, the squad, when players are brought up against each other, a lot of them were selected. I don't think the answer to Ireland's problems is that sevens players are being selected. I think they do need to be immersed as much as possible, both within the club game and within the 15 squad as earlier as possible. And that is happening more than it happened a few years ago. But the 15s international girls also need to be immersed more in the club game. They don't play enough club games. They're not released. There's this idea that obviously the national squad is elite, and this is prior to COVID, because COVID does add another layer because you're talking about bubbles, etc. But even prior to COVID, they weren't released enough, which meant the club game was suffering. You don't have as much strength and depth for someone who is playing with whatever club. It's very difficult to measure yourself up against the international standards because you don't see the international players at any stage, and there becomes more and more of a gap. So that's definitely an issue. And I think just that the club in general needs more resources, because since COVID has happened, if you weren't on that kind of circle of the international squad, the 15 squad, and they needed an extra player to pick from because either the 15 player was out of form or was injured, they had no option but to go into the 7 squad because no one else is training or playing. The intros had started up, but that was too late. That was too close to the September window. And again, the fact that was set up that way just shows that it was never really set up as a feeder into the international squad. So I do think now, I'm not sure, I think Greg McWilliams' first camps might be around January time because our Six Nations happening in a later window. I think we need to see all those players that are playing the last 2 games back playing with their clubs, almost to obviously raise the standard within the club system, and also that he's a carte blanche to pick from across that whole structure. And as much as possible, they should be released back, because as much as the England women are professional, that's not why they're so good. It's a reason, but it's because of the investment back through the years, through the club game, through having an under-20 side. It's the development pathways. They're all linked with, they're all teams like Saracens, Gloucester, they're all linked with professional men's clubs. And I know it's a different setup here with the provincial system, but don't necessarily want to just copy what men do. We need to do a lot more kind of market research into what's going to work for a women's model. But certainly just A, making the senior team professional, or B, separating completely 7s and 15s and saying you can only play at one or the other are not the answer. That they still need to work together. But we definitely need a lot more investment and a lot more, I suppose, genuine people who give a crap about the club game, and to try and just develop that as much as possible, that you're closing that gap at interpros, international, and that there's actually a pathway to see. Because otherwise, if I was 17, 18, 19 playing Gaelic football, which is, thriving so much, soccer is coming up, other sports, and I'm playing rugby as well, like, one of the reasons I left basketball to play rugby and Gaelic football is that there was no international senior team. So girls do start to look up along going, what's my goal here?
Yeah.
And if my goal here is, well, I don't even know how to make that team, I never even see those players, then you'll start to hemorrhage more and more players at that crucial stage where they're like sponges and should be developed more and more at that 17, 18, 19 years of age.
Yeah. It is definitely important to have that pathway, and maybe that comes out in the review. We'll see the bit of the review that we'll get to see anyway. Louise, great to have you with us again. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lad.
Louise Galvin, give us her thoughts there. Of course, played for the 17, played for the 15s, played basketball under 21 for Ireland, played football for Kerry. Not bad. Not a bad CV.
Yeah, pretty good. Really interesting stuff there at the end, actually, because it does seem that there's a couple of potential silver bullet ideas out there that come up every now and again, and clearly that's not the reason. I'd be interested to kind of hear a little bit more about that England situation as well, because we often point to them and say they're professional, that's why they're so good, but actually there are a hell of a lot more reasons, and maybe the lack of a thriving club game in men's rugby right now is actually having a knock-on impact on the women's game as well in some way or another. But yeah, it's really interesting to listen to her break it all down.
OTB AM with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. We're doing all right, I think, even in a non-ironic way.
7 more days.
I know, this is Movember is not just for a mow is not just for Movember.
No, it is. You didn't get that memo last year. It is literally November, just with an M at the start.
No, because I haven't finished mine. I said at the start it'll probably be Christmas or the New Year before mine's finished.
Oh, the Salvador Dali.
I'm committed to it. Right, we have loads of comments coming in.
On Michael Carrick, by any chance?
I shouldn't have opened the Michael Carrick Pandora's box. I just shouldn't have, but I did. In the meantime, should we talk about what happened at the Principality? Because it's been a while since we talked rugby and Wales. Our Twitter feeds are normally aflame with the good people of the Principality of Wales, because it is a principality. They have a prince, sweet prince, and normally whenever there's rugby on, my Twitter feed and Owen's feed, even though he is a rat who scuttled off the sinking ship when we got hulled beneath the water, when there's games on, it's like, whoa, what do you think of this? Blah, 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 blah. But curiously, they were quiet over the last 3 weeks.
Pretty disrespectful impression there of Welsh people who I love.
As Ireland racked up basically 100 and whatever points it was in 3 games against first tier opposition, who have all beaten us horribly in big games in the World Cup. How did the Wales get on? Oh, they shipped 50.
They did win against Australia.
They shipped 50 points against the All Blacks, did they?
They did, actually, at the very start. Shorn of a few players, though. You've got to give Wales their due.
Yeah. Oh, they did have their captain. And then they were going to beat South Africa, but an idiot Welsh fan stopped them from beating South Africa. I didn't think it was possible for a fan to stop you. Oh, the fans can't win or lose a game, can they? Well, actually, it turns out in Wales they can.
Yeah.
Wales have found a unique, brand new way to lose a game than I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
Drunken fan wandering onto the field and stopping you scoring a try at your own end. I mean, if he'd done it, imagine how heroic it would have been if he'd done it while South Africa were pummeling over and he got in the way of Eben Etzebeth or Damien Dialende even, who would have crushed him like a twig. And
the pint would have gone flying out of his hand.
I mean, it would have been amazing to see that happen.
Yeah.
And he would then not have been showered in beer by all his own fans. In fairness to the Wales fans, they did the right thing. They showered him in beer, and
showering a Welsh fan in beer is like the end of the Shawshank, though. Really, it's like, yes, come on, let me feel it in all of my pores.
It's a
reward.
It's a mark of respect in some cultures.
100%, especially in Wales.
But we just have to say that nothing quite crowned the November internationals like this story today in the Telegraph
Wales,
that
Wales,
Eoin is
Wales.
bringing us.
I'm so disappointed in Wales. So disappointed. I really, really got to like Wales over the last little while. On the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section, today's edition, fan vomits on 6-year-old boy.
What? Who? What country? Where is this, Eoin?
A drunken spectator left a 6-year-old boy in floods of tears.
Where?
After vomiting on him during the Wales victory over Australia on Saturday.
Puke. This game must have been in Australia, though, right?
Welsh rugby fans could face an alcohol clampdown after Joey Delaney's back and coat were covered in sick as he sat with his parents in the upper tier of the Principality Stadium during his first experience at a rugby match.
Say it ain't so, Joe. Poor little Joey.
Imagine that, bring your kid
I mean, I have
to the
done
game
this.
for the first time. You brought your kid to an Ireland football game for the last time. Imagine if an Ireland fan got sick all over them.
I can't imagine that. Irish soccer fans are, gentle. We are gentle souls. We are sweet princes. You are not sweet princes, Wales.
There were
Give me
six.
some details here.
So
Make us puke over our Frosties this morning.
So the BBC have done a bit of digging into this, and the boy's mother, Sophie, said that the intoxicated culprit did not say a word afterwards and appeared unaware of what he had done. Adding the supporter was slumped over his seat and obviously very, very drunk. It's just so bad. It's just obviously not a funny story whatsoever. It's
Come on, get it together.
It's just terrible behaviour, obviously.
What happened?
So, do you want to take over here? Because
No, come on, you can do it.
So she said there was sick everywhere. Joey was so upset and shocked. I had to stop myself from crying from seeing my son so upset and from the absolute shock of it all. The Welsh Rugby Union said it would review the steward's report following the incident, adding it was sorry to hear about the family's experience. It's not funny at all. It's just Welsh fans being Welsh fans, I guess. I'm really, really sorry that the Welsh fans have been tarred with this guy as well.
Not all Welsh fans, Owen. # not all Welsh fans.
Yeah, absolutely. So the WRU obviously have hit back at this, saying that it's not all Welsh fans, saying in excess of 275,000 fans have attended the Autumn Nation Series games, and the vast majority of fans enjoyed themselves in a responsible and considerate way. It is our policy for staff to intervene if people are visibly intoxicated. Obviously you mentioned there's been a couple of other things that have been done over the last little while. In Wales' game against South Africa, you mentioned a pitch invader who interrupted a Wales attack after running onto the pitch. You didn't mention the key part of that. It was part of a £20 bet with a friend. Wales and South Africa supporters close to the press box also engaged in a full-on brawl near the final whistle in the same fixture, with stewards intervening to calm things down. Previous alcohol-related incidents recently at the Principality have included a journalist's laptop suffering damage after being covered in a pint deliberately thrown into the press box by a drunk supporter. A married couple also complained this month after being left soaked in beer after a drunk spectator fell onto them from 2 rows above. That is just shocking from Wales supporters. That is just desperate behaviour.
Horrific.
2 rows above.
A married couple.
They circumvented a row in the middle. Did they get catapulted above row D, went from row E to row C, and engaged in in those other spectators. So it's interesting that they complain after being left soaked in beer after a drunk spectator fell onto them from 2 rows. A supporter goes catapulting at you, and I would imagine that the spectator itself would have caused a bit of damage, not only to pints that that the spectator was holding. I'm sorry, this is obviously just it's something. You said something needs to be done about this.
I'm just on Wales Online. I can't see the story anywhere on Wales Online this morning. Maybe they'll aggregate it later on from the Telegraph. But it's not. I'm looking at it. I don't see it.
I mean, we essentially experienced Wales fans catapulting on us from a height over the course of the Six Nations. So solidarity to the 6-year-old boy. I know what you're feeling.
We have been puked on by the Welsh fans, metaphorically.
I've been vomited on, spewed on by Wales Online and Welsh journalists who like to take things quite literally, and we've been spewed on by certainly a man called Reese in my DMs who pops up every so often, and David often pops up as well. It's been an interesting year for Wales, and congratulations to them on their win over Australia.
Their online world rankings at the moment: South Africa, England, France, New Zealand. We're 5th. Ireland are 5th, ahead of Wales, according to Wales Online. Maybe they're yerring us away. Right, OTB AM with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. It would never happen at a football match, says Ashley on YouTube. Okay, I'm going to tell you about our latest Cadbury Road show. This is with Arsenal. It's with Robert Pires. I've actually already spoken to Robert Pires. He's going to be coming over the next few days. Katie McCabe has also done a brilliant interview with us about the setback that she suffered when she was at Glasgow and the recovery to now be one of the best players in the WSL. And I don't know if everybody knows, but Jerry Flannery spent a really interesting 12 months out of rugby and at Arsenal working with their strength and conditioning team with their senior academy players. He talks really well about the influence of Liam Brady in particular. So you don't want to miss our next Cadbury FC Roadshow. It's behind the scenes with the Arsenal squad. And it's all thanks to Cadbury FC and their club partnerships, granting you behind the scenes access at the Premier League's biggest clubs, coming soon to OTB Sports social channels. Robert Pires struggled with Gary Neville for some particular reasons. He says Neville was his most difficult opponent. We'll get the details of that on all our social channels in the coming days. It's all in association, as I said, with Cadbury FC and their club partnerships. Cathal is with us this morning to talk to us about the sports news. Cathal, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning. All well, lads.
Have you ever been puked on by a Welsh fan?
Not yet.
It's on your bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are we
Bizarre
starting
story.
today?
Well, some breaking news actually from the League of Ireland. Waterford have terminated the contract of their manager Mark Burcham just 3 days before their promotion relegation playoff against UCD. This one has developed fairly quickly in the last hour. So Burcham tweeted this morning to say that he had been suspended for a week by the club after a difference of opinion with the owner in a text message conversation last night. And Waterford have now taken the decision to end Burcham's term in the southeast rather. Having been appointed in May, the Englishman signed a 2-year contract in August. He had given them a little bit of an upturn in form at that stage during the course of the summer, but this one has developed pretty quickly. So Mark Burcham's time in Waterford is over.
And it's not like this season is over for Waterford, is it?
No, they've got their promotion relegation playoff against UCD. So they've got a huge game coming up. And,
right.
3 days before it now, they're managerless. So should be interesting to see how that one pans out. But it's, as I say, it's just happened in the last hour. So he put out that tweet, and then Waterford have tweeted in the last, 20 minutes or so, that his time is over with the club. So Waterford on the lookout for a new manager. Elsewhere on the managerial front, with Manchester United in Champions League action tonight, of course under the stewardship of Michael Carrick after the sacking of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer over the weekend. They take on Villarreal in the Champions League this evening. That's a 5:45 kick-off. It's the club's first match, of course, since Solskjaer was sacked on Sunday. Michael Carrick is in temporary charge, and he says he'll stay in charge for as long as he is needed.
Obviously know the boys very well, know the staff very well, know the club very well. This club's been my life for an awful long time now, and so you know it's the sacrifice and dedication that you've got to get and you've got to give. I'm prepared to do that, obviously, however long it takes. I'm prepared to do that for whether it's one game, whether it's 2 games, whether it's a little stretch longer than that.
So that's Michael Carrick. Kick-off, as I say, for that one in Spain tonight is at 5:45. Elsewhere, Chelsea can move level on points with Group H leaders Juventus in their encounter. Those two sides clash at Stamford Bridge for made. A point will be enough for Chelsea to secure their passage through to the knockout stage. Elsewhere, in some other soccer news this morning, domestically, Shamrock Rovers defender Roberto Lopez, Bohemian striker Georgie Kelly and St Pat's midfielder Chris Forrester have been nominated for the PFAI Player of the Year award. It's Lopez's second nomination in as many years. Kelly and Forrester, of course, will square off in the FAI Cup final this Sunday at the Aviva Stadium. And speaking of Cup finals, Shelbourne say they won't be launching an appeal surrounding last Sunday's Women's FAI Cup final. The Wexford Youths won that game 3-1, but then reports emerged yesterday suggesting that the FAI had launched an investigation into the eligibility of one of the Youths players introduced off the bench. But in a statement last night, Shell said they did not make a complaint, nor do they intend to do so, and they congratulated Wexford on their victory. Elsewhere in football this week, the Republic of Ireland, of course, continued their World Cup qualifying campaign. They continue their preparations today as well. Slovakia are the visitors to Tallaght Stadium on Thursday. That's before a meeting with Georgia at the same venue on Tuesday. There was a couple of players drafted into the squad yesterday, including the England-born goalkeeper Megan Walsh of Brighton, Ellen Malloy, Leanne Kiernan and Claire Walsh have all been forced to withdraw due to injury. And the Ireland midfielder Jamie Finn has been speaking ahead of the game and insists that 6 points is the goal for their upcoming qualifier. She says that they need to build on last month's win away to Finland.
We need to go into every game that we can beat these teams and get the 3 points, and no disrespect to any opponent we play against. I think you have to go into every single game with a positive attitude and that you're going to come away, you're going to perform well as a team, as a unit, and get the 3 points. And I think that the Finland game away was brilliant and like what a result away from home, and I think we need to bring that into this camp now, all the positives that was in that game, and really drive forward.
Yeah, so a big couple of games coming up for the Republic of Ireland women's team. Some breaking Gaelic Games news this morning as well. Mayo's Cullen Boyle has announced his retirement from inter-county football. He won 4 All-Stars and 6 Connacht medals during his career with the Westerners. He made a total of 120 appearances for the county. So Cullen Boyle's time with Mayo is over. And elsewhere in Gaelic Games, some sad news last night. The former Limerick All-Ireland winning hurler Eamon Ned Ray passed away at the age of 77. He won a Celtic Cross with the county in 1973. He also collected 2 Munster titles during an 11-year inter-county career. Elsewhere this morning in cricket, the Ireland women's cricket team, they're currently in World Cup qualifying action in Zimbabwe at the moment. They're up against the West Indies. This one got underway at about 7:30 Irish time. They're currently 69 without loss. That's after just over 17 overs. They were put into to bat first by the West Indies, who won the toss, and Ireland faced the Netherlands and Sri Lanka in their other group matches later this week. And 2 other small bits just to finish up in snooker. The UK Championship gets underway in York today. Kyron Wilson is among the early players out there this afternoon in the afternoon session. And in racing, there's an 8-race card at Punchestown this afternoon where the first goes to post at 12 midday.
All right, Carl, good stuff. Thanks a million for that. It is 8:51. I'm just doing some quick reading about Mark Burcham's time at Waterford. He's given a new 2-year deal in August, and here we are in November, and he's out. But the match, I don't know if you remember the firework being on the field of play after Rovers had just won the title. The Rovers fans let off a firework in that game. I'm very surprised that there wasn't an automatic victory awarded to Waterford for that. That would have been
multiple fireworks,
fairly standard. That's an automatic 3-0 win for you. But actually, they lost that game 3-1. And in the press conference afterwards, Mark Burcham said that he was disgusted by his players. I'm disgusted at my players. We don't deserve to stay up. If we defend set pieces like that, we don't deserve to be in the league. From the 91st minute in the Derry game, we've let 3 of the worst set pieces in that I can see. We let another corner in tonight and a wide free kick where someone's headed into the middle of our box and no one's made contact. They know their jobs. The players know who they are, those that have let us down. The players have let a lot of the team down in the last 2 games, and if we defend set pieces like that, we don't deserve to be in the league. It's disgusting. They're not doing their jobs. When it comes to the pressure time of the season, they're not doing their jobs, so it doesn't matter how well we play.
Fair play.
This is
the fireworks was a pretty easy scapegoat there.
He actually said he wasn't playing the fireworks. There's a great quote about the fireworks. When asked whether they had any impact on the result, not at all. Now, that's not an issue. Fireworks on the pitch, it was a bit dangerous, but did it affect the set pieces? The fireworks had no impact on the set pieces, unless perhaps it was distracting the players from what they were doing. So, look, interesting character.
Yeah, God, it's
now he's gone.
Now he's gone. It's quite a League of Ireland story, isn't it? This whole thing, and obviously in such a pivotal few days for the club as well. It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. But I admire that honesty. I admire the sort of we'll focus on what we can control, because Shamrock Rovers fans letting off fireworks is not something we can control. It's
been a bonkers League of Ireland season, and it ain't over yet. It's 8:53 this morning. We're chatting to Kilkenny's Eoin Murphy next. Still to come, we're talking Champions League with Graham Hunter after 9.
OTB AM.
Okay, so Avonmore Protein Milk are teaming up with Dublin footballer Brian Fenton and Kilkenny hurler Eoin Murphy to launch the new Avonmore Pro Oats product. Fenton and Murphy who have 9 All-Ireland Championship medals between them, were representing the Gaelic Players Association, of whom, along with the GAA, Avonmore Protein Milk are a long-standing supporter. As you can see, Eoin Murphy is with us now. Eoin, congratulations, county champions, Glenmore. I presume it's been one hell of a week.
Yeah, Owen, listen, thanks a million for having me on. It's been a great few days, to be honest. This is, a nice way to finish off the week as well, just coming up, getting a trip back to Croke Park and that as well. But, brilliant celebrations. And, thankfully we don't win too much now, to be honest.
Yeah, so this was the Intermediate Championship. How long had you been in the Intermediate for?
So we got relegated in 2005, back out of senior.
Right.
So it's been that long, 16 years, and we spent a year in junior in between that then as well, Owen. So we've been building for the last couple of years, and we've a huge amount of young players that have shown huge amount of ability, have played schools level at a really high level, and have played at intercounty level, minor 20s and that as well. So but it's only so long, I suppose, that you can class a team as young, and so look, there's no better time to win something than now. Do you know what I mean? So we've enjoyed it for a few days. We haven't got word just yet of when we're going back, and but looking forward to it, and we'll give the Leinster Championship a crack as well.
How does a week like this compare to winning an All-Ireland with Kilkenny and the sort of national and obviously county-wide story that is, and the madness of it all?
Look, to be honest, it means much, much more, simply because, look, for as long as I can remember, I've been down in our pitch at home, and my mum has watched the jersey. She's chairperson at a camogie club at home. My dad has been chairperson. He fixes the hurls. My brother makes the hurls. Uncle makes the hurls. We just have a huge connection with the club, and we are a tight bunch then as well. And there was a huge sigh of relief. I was beaten in 5 intermediate semi-finals up till when we won our semi-final a couple of weeks ago, and we've never just fell over the line at that stage. So there was just a huge sense of relief getting over the semi-final, and we discussed it, I suppose, among ourselves. Look, that these would be the best days of our lives, if we could pull this off, and and to enjoy it as well, sort of to express it, because you can get to a final and you can be caught up in the moment and maybe forget how big of an occasion it is. And I think you just you need to take a step back and realise that these don't come around too often. And look, we had a bit of a slow start. First 15 minutes we were sluggish, we were 6 points down, and we just started turning the screw then. Lads stepped up to the plate big time, and just everyone, it was just a huge amount of emotion afterwards, to be honest.
How does your role for the club differ to your role for the county? Is there any sort of Shane Curran style making runs up the pitch or anything like that?
No. I'm the centre back calling everyone back, so I don't get to do too much marking. I know I'm playing centre back in my club now for the last couple of years, and I've always played off field from a club own, to be very honest. So look, and I'm happy enough with that. I can feel I can contribute to our game out the field and that as well. And look, I play absolutely anywhere, and I've always said that, like in Kilkenny, and I know it's sort of a bit of a cliche thing, but from when I was knee high, 3-4 years of age, whatever age it was, and we were hurling out in our lawn, or as we call it, the little pitch outside at home, you just play anywhere at all, and you just love playing hurling. And at the end of all that, I know everybody enjoys playing it, but you can't beat winning then after that. And so look, it's been a great week all around.
It's not exactly a great hiding place if you're coming from between the sticks to go out to centre back. Like, it's as important a position as there is. So that's obviously something that I guess underlines the modern hurling goalkeeper, right? That there's top class hurlers in between the sticks these days. Yeah, look, and to be fair on, I think the last couple of years, the fact that there's been a split season, and that has helped me hugely. I think it's hugely beneficial for a club player anyway, because at least they have a defined season. They know exactly when they're going to be playing, not just when the inter-county team gets bet into championship, which I think, how long is a piece of string? You just don't know. So, from my point of view, I'm back, I'm training as an outfield player. So that sharpness and that,
being able to read the game, that helps me because I get a set period of time playing out the field, playing with the boys in that position. As you said, it is a pivotal position. But then also the way the Kilkenny Championship used to run before, back maybe 3-4 years ago, if we played a Leinster game, we would have a club game the week afterwards, and that was just the way the league was ran. And I used to find that extremely hard because you're going from a 4 or 5 week block playing in the goal, training in the goal. Everything is veered to my set position with Kilkenny, and I'm going back out and trying to play midfield, centre back, centre forward, wherever we used to be playing with my club. I used to find that hard in a 1 week window. So yeah, it suits me the last couple of years the way it's been run off. And look, as you said yourself, the fact that I'm in a very privileged position playing with Kilkenny, being an intercounty player, we have to be leaders for our club and, be shown to be doing the right things as well. So like the fact that I can, be performing somewhat and driving on lads around me, that's a huge plus as well from the position I'm in with Kilkenny,
If we could just talk about goalkeeping for a minute then, because it really seems to be a talking point over the last couple of years, how people like yourself and Nicky Quaid have really upped the bar completely. It's almost gone in tandem with football, where the goalkeeping is definitely some of the, I guess, most innovative and high quality that we've seen ever in the game. Like, why is that, do you think? What's the sort of work that you've put in and the sort of innovations that you've brought to your game that's allowed this increase in standard to happen?
Well, I always found that I was really comfortable on the ball anyway, Eoin, because of my playing days out the field with Glenmore and with the college when I was in WIT, and so I just found that I was really comfortable on the ball. But I think now if you're not used to being on the ball and shown for the ball in particular, it's an extra outlet for the backs, and then how you distribute the ball when you're in play, like when you're in possession. So be it from restart, be it from play, like it's hugely important now. Where look, if you can retain possession, primary possession, like that's half the battle. The other team then have to work twice as hard to get it back off. Like so. And that's the way teams are playing now. It's and I think Limerick have probably redefined the possession game as well, in comparison to the Cork team back in, say, mid to early noughties, 3, 4, 5 and 6, that area, but where it might be in a little bit more of a hand passing sort of running game. Limerick have very similar, but it's 30, 40 yard drilled passes to players, and as I said, they just redefined that. And Nicky Quaid is, I said in an interview a couple of years ago, Nicky Quaid has been one of the best goalies in the game for the last I don't know how many years, and probably didn't get the recognition he deserved at that time because look, Limerick weren't winning All-Irelands, they weren't winning Munsters at that stage, and he's getting his due rewards now, absolutely. And I think teams, if they're coming up against Limerick, like obviously there is a couple of key players that you have to pinpoint and you want to maybe have a game plan to counteract them, and Nicky is certainly one of those. He's definitely the best there at the moment.
And that's been really evident in terms of what you mentioned there, the understanding that you have of the outfield positions, the contribution to open play, but the basics seem to have gone up a notch as well. The shot stopping, like from your own perspective, then is that something that you're constantly working on? Is there drills that you do to try and keep your sharpness? Because, like, pardon the pun, but there are cat-like reflexes quite often from your own perspective in big moments and big matches. Yeah, look, and I think everybody's knowledge of strength and conditioning now, I think, has probably allowed me, even though I'm into my 30s now, to stay what I feel physically now probably in the best shape that I've ever felt I've been in, even in my mid-20s. And I know what works for my body now. And obviously Mickey Comfort coming in then the last couple of years, introducing a few more things to your strength and conditioning programs, your off-season programs as well, and that helps hugely. So I think there is the stuff that you do in the off-season, the stuff you do in between your sessions as part of your gym programs, like that adds something to it. But in training, I'm constantly working with Darren Brennan and James McGarry and that too, and and you're trying to go through drills that you feel might be like game-like scenarios. But look, there's only so much that you can replicate in that regards too. At the end of it, look, it's sometimes you guess that split second
you guessed correctly. And it is like it's such a small margins. Like, you take a penalty, some of the top players, and they're taking a shot from 21 yards out, and and I can try turn around and read Aaron Glan's shot. I can try read Patrick Horgan's, whoever it may be that's going to be taking a penalty. And, if he throws a half a dummy and goes the other side, you look like a fool. But like, if I guess the right way, it's you're a genius sort of thing. So it's very, very small margins, to be honest.
And would you have been watching Patrick Horgan take penalties on video before that All-Ireland semi-final?
Yeah, you would. And similar enough, a couple of years ago in the semi-final against Limerick, I would have watched Aaron Glan taking some of them as well. That day he threw me the wrong way, so I was looked like a bit of a clown at that stage. But look, that's just the way it goes, and that's what you have to do. But like, if you take any of the backs or whatever it is, they're going to be looking at forwards, individual clips, and seeing exactly what is their favourite side, or what way do they like a ball coming in, and what way, I suppose, does he not like the defender attacking the ball? So everybody goes into that finer detail now. We have access to a bundle of information now between video clips and, as I mentioned, strength and conditioning, nutrition, everything. So that's where everything is just going to the next level. And if you're not taking that on board, I think you're going to be left behind.
Arthur O'Dea, who works with us at a piece with Colm Callanan and James Cathal over the last couple of days, and Colm Callanan was telling the story about this Christy O'Connor drill. I'm not sure if you fell victim to this as well, but he said he had to stop the car and pull over for a while after training, to down a couple of bottles of Lucozade Sport. Such was the reddening he got off Christy O'Connor, to put it in Christy's own words. Is that the level of drills that you're being subjected to in training as well?
Yeah, look, I may have a chat to Colm about that and see what he passes on that drill. But it would be. And, right. You train... Like, how does that
actually happen? Like, what is the drill?
Well, that particular drill, I haven't seen the clip now, so I may look back over it. I've sort of been offline now for the last couple of days, but I look back on it. But like, we do reaction drills as well, where you have a bundle of maybe 20 balls, about 20 plus yards from goal, and as soon as you save one, or there's a shot taken, you're taking a step out to it. So by the time you're getting down to the last letter, it's probably only 10-12 yards, and like, obviously you have to cover the angles behind you and the goal. You just have to know where you are on the pitch at any one time. And that's one of my favorite ones as well. And it's just pure reaction drill. If it hits off you, it hits off you. Do you know what I mean? You have to get used to that. And it's like the tackling drills in training that the outfield players are doing as well. They're just conditioning themselves to game-like scenarios, to be honest.
I presume you're long past the point of taking any notice of taking a belt to the slitter, even on a cold night.
Yeah, well, even on a cold night, no. Listen, any goalkeeper that tells you he doesn't think about getting a thing of a slitter on a cold January night now, he's definitely lying. I can tell you that. But no, listen, you would be. You do get used to it. Look, it's much easier to take one during the summer than it is in the winter. I'll tell you that.
There has to be a madness though there as well, though, and I'm sure, like, where you kind of just compartmentalise, whether it's going up for a high ball or bursting out of the defence with the ball in your hand or shot stopping. There has to be a sense of, you know what, I need to put my body on the line here regardless, as a goalkeeper.
Absolutely. And do you know what, sometimes you just don't even think of it, like, because a lot of the things are so instinctive. Like, if you take that split second to think about maybe what you're doing, like the process of it, like, that split second is too late. And so it's you're just trying to expose yourself and train and look back to that. And honestly, I am a believer you train the way you want to play, like, and like how you play on the day then will be as a result of how you've trained over the last however many couple of months, couple of weeks, or whatever it is between games and things like that as well. So I'm a big believer of that.
And how do you see the role of the goalkeeper changing over the next little while? Is there going to be more influence, do you think, on your role?
I think it's probably getting to a stage now where maybe from a hurling goalkeeping point of view is whether we're going to take the next step to the likes of Niall Morgan and and those guys who are basically like the fly keepers in the football. And you see it in the Ulster final here. It amount of bravery, I suppose you could call it. But again, they're so comfortable being on the ball and coming out and taking these balls in as well, confident in their own amount of ability. So maybe, I don't know, is that the next step in hurling goalkeeping? But the thing is, if you get whoever, we'll say, in the half-back line of the opposition team, they're going to drive the ball 90 yards. So if you're anyway off your line, like they'll be able to score a goal. So, I'm not so sure on. It's an interesting one. Look, and I suppose when I first came in, I would have been asking about the sharp puckouts. What were you feeling of it? What do you think of it? And I think now it's just an acceptance that you have to be, apt at taking sharp puckouts and being confident in your own ability to take sharp puckouts and your own players' abilities, your teammates' abilities, for taking the puckouts as well. Like that's a given now. But back 2011, 12 or 13 would have been my first year, and was asked about it. And, and I said, I don't mind giving a sharp puck out. Is it only a 20, 30 yard pass? And that was a thing for a couple of years. But now, as I said, it's just, it's a given. You have to do it.
Yeah, there'll be centre-backs playing in goals for every team before long. You have been listening to Kilkenny's Eoin Murphy, who's teamed up with Avonmore Protein Milk to launch the new Avonmore Pro Oats products. Murphy, and Brian Fenton, who we'll be talking to later on as well, have 9 All-Ireland Championship medals between them, and they were representing the Gaelic Players Association, of whom, along with the GEA, Avonmore Protein Milk are a long-standing supporter. Eoin, congratulations again on last weekend. Best of luck now with the rest of the winter and into next year. Thanks a million.
Eoin, cheers. Thanks a million.
OTB AM.
Yeah, really interesting stuff there. And if you haven't checked out that piece by Arthur O'D on the website, you should, particularly if you've had any interest in that, because the madness of the goalkeepers is right there writ large. It's 10 minutes past 9 this morning. OTB AM with Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow. Right, we've got Graham Hunter with us, I think. Yeah? Graham, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
What's the crack? How are you?
Yeah, super. Yeah, just back from some filming in Valencia and Seville, with filming in Bilbao to come this week. But the Champions League in the middle, with Barca under pressure.
I mean, the Barcelona story is incredible. The Real Madrid story is pretty incredible. And the fact that so many names being linked with the Man United job have some kind of Spanish connection means that this is quite a delicious period. Jurgen Klopp said he hated the international break. We actually quite enjoyed the international break for a change. I suspect maybe you did too. The atmosphere...
Loved it for several reasons. You're obviously referring to Spain and their ease of qualification. There's no hint about you even mentioning mighty Scotland and the way in which we demolished the world's unofficially number 1 ranked in Denmark. Yeah, look, the international break this time I thought was particularly vibrant. And, I find myself deeply intellectually challenged for about the 10 millionth time talking to you two, and that I hate the way that we treat our footballers. I hate the way we treat them as commodities and squeeze every last drop of physical availability and also mental creativity out of them. We're treating them somewhere between cattle and products. Yet I am one of those that the more football I see, the more that's available, the more I get a chance to go to games, talk to footballers after games, the happier I am. So I accept the contradiction, but if you give me a chance just to glimpse at the Scotland side, I was sitting on Friday night with ex-Scotland manager Craig Brown. He couldn't remember a game where he'd either been working or watching, but he'd seen Scotland play better. And he meant it at 81, that he couldn't remember a better performance than the one against Denmark. Maybe that's a little bit exaggerated, but the quality of football was absolutely superb.
And the atmosphere.
Well coached. To have, after the 2 years that we've been through, to have fans back initially was brilliant. To have fans back initially for Scotland was a mixed blessing, because there were deep doubts about the quality of football, the progress over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years easily. To go from where there was a fervour for Scotland being represented in a tournament again in the summer, but clear gaps about how to handle the bigger sides, how to handle sides that wanted to attack you, to now, where the learning has been ultra rapid, right across the technical staff and the squad, there's a clear understanding of how to play against bigger, better teams. Not necessarily turn them over, we're not suddenly world beaters, but the tactical nous, but then the confidence, and that's transmitted to fans. Hampden was jam-packed full. Yes, the atmosphere was brilliant, but I tuned in only on television this time to the game the next day where Wales were playing in Cardiff Stadium, and the atmosphere there was absolutely roasting. It was so good. So to have teams that matter to me playing well in front of full houses, it's something that seems next to a dream, next to impossible after so many years of a dearth of success for Scotland, but then 2 years without crowds in stadia. It's just fantastic. But Spain played well. Don't forget, Spain played well. And over the next 4, 5, 6 years, I would expect Spain to be in direct competition to lift trophies.
Well, they've got a slew of young kids who many of whom are coming through at Barca at the moment. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But the Spain job in particular, if we could all tap Ronald Koeman on the shoulder and say, don't leave, don't take that job. It's a poison chalice, and you're doing really well at the moment. If you just stay with the Dutch, you're going to have a good time. He didn't. I suspect Luis Enrique is not as stupid as Koeman, and will not be in any way interested or entertained by the prospect of taking the Man United job, even though apparently he is Ronaldo's chosen successor. Is there anything in this at all? Anything beyond a flight of fancy?
I know that you've lit the blue touch paper and you're now standing well back. I know you know how much I think the story is garbage. I don't know where it came from. And if somebody has spoken to Cristiano Ronaldo or directly to Jorge Mendes, who tends to be his mouthpiece, and this is coming from them, then it's the most bizarre story ever. And I'll tell you why. Before we even look at what Luis Enrique Martinez might or might not do, if you've watched his football from the very days that he took over at Barca B, the moderate season at Roma, what he did at Celta, Barcelona, onwards to Spain, Cristiano Ronaldo right now is the epitome of the type of footballer that Luis Enrique doesn't want in his team. He's not particularly attracted to stars in the first place, but right across the board, whoever you are, however much he has liked you, however much he hasn't liked you, but you're vital, if you're not running and pressing and working and trying to win the ball back, anytime his team, Luis Enrique's team, doesn't have the ball, you're out. That's it. Goodbye. And possibly goodbye forever. And at the moment, and probably for the last few years, increasingly since the success at Barcelona, he's ultra about his own beliefs. It's not as if he was a flip-flopper before, but like, you probably get one warning, and then you're out. Now, imagine in some ludicrous world, Luis Enrique leaves Spain, takes over at Manchester United. Cristiano Ronaldo is maybe getting biscuit crumb minutes at the end of games, not because of any personal antipathy, but because Luis Enrique believes in a particular style that Cristiano Ronaldo, because of his age, cannot fulfill. So also there's something that needs to be said. Cristiano Ronaldo, for whatever you think about him, is football bright and is very shrewd, street smart about his own career. The idea that he might be saying, I want this guy to come to the club where I'm working, in the full knowledge that he'd be dropped, it's just, honestly, the whole concept stinks of rotten fish. Okay.
Does the concept of Guardiola wanting Ronaldo in the summer also stink of rotten fish by the same criteria? Was that true?
I can't remember if we talked.
I don't think we did.
Show or not, but for my taste, and I got some nudges, I got some help on this. It was a corporate thing. It was a club idea. I'll say three things. One, Cristiano Ronaldo is in no way responsible for the mess that Manchester United are in right now. Two, at the time he signed for Manchester United, with Alex Ferguson's intervention, everybody was hailing it as a great coup. So at the time when Manchester City wanted him, you can vouch for the concept or not analytically. You, the viewers, I can do it too. You can say good idea, bad idea in sporting terms. But could you see it in commercial terms? Could you see it in City being able to wave two fingers up at Manchester United? Could you see it in terms of attracting more attention to City? Yeah, you could see it. One thing that Pep Guardiola has said continuously throughout his career, he will go and object about things he doesn't like to his employers, but there's been a constant mantra of, I'm an employee. He's had to do things across his career that he hasn't particularly liked or enjoyed. And there will come a stage, just like Luis Enrique, and I see the jump that you make because of the way both of them like to play, the fact that, maybe City do lack a scorer because they couldn't get Kane, all this kind of stuff. To my mind, it was a City project with very little interest from Pep Guardiola in it. But Luis Enrique and Guardiola are not the same man. Luis Enrique is much, much, much more hawkish than Pep, believe me.
Right, interesting, because it didn't seem like it would make sense, and it's a terrible idea for him. I know the money might be more, but go and win your World Cup, either now or the next one, and then whatever job you want is yours for life, and you can name your paycheck, and it's not like he needs the money anyway. So, what Zidane, not going to happen? A good idea, bad idea? What do you think?
Look, number one, in tactical terms, one of the things that's really, really important about Zidane is that he is the player whisperer. He is the guy who can go to either slightly out of form, slightly misunderstood, perhaps slightly jaded great players and talk them through the rehabilitation, who can ensure that there's a daily climate set where very good and great players thrive. I don't think he has ever tried to masquerade as one of these obsessive strategy tactical coaches. He fits into the bracket of what, and there's a different age between you two and me, but we all grew up in Britain and Ireland with much more of a concept of manager, somebody who managed the squad. There'd be a coach to his side, 2 or 3 coaches sometimes, but the manager managed them, was really good at the dressing room, with atmosphere, with orders, with setting a tone. That's Zidane, and that, you will know better than me, is not what Manchester United need right now. They need crystal clear. They need one of these intensive interventionist coaches who says, this is the way we're playing. You're not doing that anymore. We need to do that. The space between all these things that we've become used to saying. And none of these names, I mean individually, but there's a bracket of Unai Emery, Lopetegui, Benitez, Pep Guardiola, Luis Enrique, coaches who are like, this is the way it's going to be. There'll be no Conte. I mean, it's one of the great own goals of modern times that if United were on the point of saying one bad defeat in Solskjaer's that they didn't just go and get Conte. It defies belief. So Zidane as a concept at Manchester United, I think would be likely to be an ill fit with what they need and what he's offering. He wants the Paris Saint-Germain job. I now don't have much doubt that Pochettino will somehow goad Leonardo, the ultra irascible, ultra pompous PSG sports director, to a point where they're willing to let him go. And I'd now be a little bit surprised personally if it's not Pochettino to Manchester United at some stage, depending on how accelerated that can become, and Zidane to Paris Saint-Germain.
And do you still maintain, Graham, then that missing out on Conte would have been is a bad moment for Manchester United? You have Conte in a level above Pochettino.
I have him as different. I think another evolution in the coaching market in recent years to do with many more billionaire foreign owners across Europe, where patience is short. The Abramovich model having been seen and copied by equivalent elite clubs around Europe. There are managers, Ancelotti is one, Conte is another, where you're betting that what you get is a 2, maybe maximum 3-year infusion of caffeine, where all standards are changed, where the daily intensity can bring burnout, but will almost always bring massive improvements. No real attention paid to whether academy players can come through or not. It's all about win this second, win this hour, win this day, win this month, win this season, win trophies. Everything is now. Ultra hothouse intensive. Conte is that. Then the likelihood is that he'll ask too much upwards. He doesn't manage upwards particularly well. It's these are my standards. I want this player, that player. If you can't bring him, then I'm out of here. And that's precisely what United need right now. He was the identikit of what they needed. He probably wasn't the 5-year, 6-year man. Pochettino might be. clearly a developer. He is a good coach. He clearly has footballing ideas within his skill set that match with the general image that the fans and the sponsors have of the club. Let's leave Ed Woodward out of this argument, because it's incredible that people are still talking about what should be done at Manchester United, and Mourinho was this and Van Gaal was this and the players, and it's Woodward. Couldn't be more simple. You can't sack the owners. They're at fault here. Woodward has been a disastrous presence for Manchester United. But within the scope of that not being something that's imminently going to change, in fact, he's so good at his job, he's apparently going to stay on and oversee all these successor. Good move, United. Fantastic. Yeah, salute that. Pochettino is patently somebody around whom there are doubts. One of the things I've said on your show before, but when Bayern Munich were scouting him as a potential replacement for who was a Croat manager, at any rate, the Croatian manager that they needed to replace, and they did do with Flick. They looked at him. Salihamidzic watched Pochettino really closely and said, he's slow to make changes within games. You see a situation, he's conservative, he's a bit reactive. So there are things there. There are things about how soon he allays the idea about trophy winning in a place where it's not, shooting fish in a barrel like it is at Paris Saint-Germain. Personally, I think that if you only look at the little flaws, the little Achilles heels, and ignore the talent, then that's a mistake. And Pochettino would be the longer term, the developing coach, who, if it clicks, you can imagine being there for 5-6 years, which sets him apart from Conte in personality and attitude and daily regime. But if you want accelerated change, immediate impact, it was Conte.
Right. Obviously that's gone now, so they're left with Pochettino. It doesn't seem like a million other viable candidates, because you can give the job to Brendan Rodgers, fair enough, but Leicester aren't doing great at the moment.
Hold on, viable candidates. What does that mean? They missed a trick. Right, I got back to my Woodward argument because you've dangled out red rag. Irrespective of what kind of job Darren Fletcher is going to do there, he's rather new in the door. What you're getting is agents influencing Woodward. They've missed 3 huge tricks at United. The first one was Ancelotti. Ancelotti was going back to Real Madrid. The idea of saying to him, we know that you can manage in situations where it's as difficult, for example, under Berlusconi, as it is under the Glazers and Woodward. He also has the wisdom and the solutions to alter things, to make they would not be in the situation they're in now if they'd hired Ancelotti. The other trick they've missed is Conte. We talked about him. And for my taste, the trick they've missed is Xavi. Because Xavi is extraordinary, speaks English perfectly, and is going to be outrageous. He's going to be an outrageously talented coach and manager. And for my taste, that won't always be at Barcelona. There'll come a stage. And that's one of the things that I would done. People now are looking at it has to be tried and tested. I don't think that's true. And Xavi is so talented and he was available, and you could have given Barcelona a bloody nose. And at the moment, Barcelona and Manchester United aren't as nose to nose rivals as they were for 5 or 6 years between 2008 and 2011, 2012, 2013. However, those 2 tricks are missed, and laugh off Xavi if you disagree with Conte, if you disagree with Ancelotti, because he had a couple of bad months at Everton. But the truth is, it's evidence of, allied to the way that they're thrashing around right now, it's evidence of how poor Woodward's grasp of needing to have a proper strategy is, and how poorly he consults. It's something that is deeply frustrating. And if it begins to cost the jobs or the futures of potentially really important men to Manchester United, like Fletcher, because there's an overhaul coming, then that'll be another own goal. And to my mind, the idea that fans at United want to protest about the Glazers is important, but probably futile in the meantime, because they're only selling for what they think to be is a massive profit or a financial incentive, that is better than the one that's staying. Woodward is the weak man. He's the weak link. He is the problem, and that's where the protest should be aimed.
Yeah, and look, he says he's on the way out. He says he'll consult even if the hunt for the new manager goes beyond the time he's supposed to leave the club, which is good of him, decent of him to stay involved. We're totally out of time, Graham, but Barca against Benfica tonight. Xavi started with a win. Every single match at the moment is a cup final in terms of trying to get out of that group because they started so badly. Can he do it? Can they dig themselves out of that hole?
It's a proper cup final because if they win, they're through. And that's a 60 million win and the confidence. They've got injuries that are even worse than they were last weekend. They can do it. I think there's slight odds against winning against Benfica, but they've got extraordinary young footballers. I think De Jong is going to score tonight. I think that Barcelona have a chance. They need to draw to keep it alive for the last game, which is a walk in the park somewhere down in Munich against Bayern. So let's hope at least it's alive so that we can do this again just before match day 6.
And Villarreal, there's a good chance they actually beat Man United tonight, right?
The bookies don't agree with you, and the reason for that is that Paco Alcácer is very likely out. Jared Moreno is out. There are injuries left, right and centre across the Villarreal squad. Unai Emery is having the oddest of seasons, whereby if it wasn't for a couple of decent wins, they'd be down touching the relegation zone. They're good enough to beat Manchester United. They definitely are. I have no idea what impact Michael Carrick will have on United, so I don't want to call the result of the game. But the bookies say that Villarreal are distinctly second favourites at home at the Madrigal against even this wobbly Manchester United. And I guess nobody would be ultra shocked if Villarreal rally. They're difficult to beat, and some Portuguese guys pops up in the 98th minute to score a winner. Let's see. Well,
that's why we watch, because we don't know the results. Graham, great to have you with us. Thanks a million. Cheers. Graham Hunter giving us some pretty interesting thoughts there on who the next United manager will be. For Pochettino to provoke the fight with Leonardo, all he's got to do is say some stuff at the press conference. The players disgust me. They're defending set pieces like that. We don't deserve to be in this league if they defend set pieces like that.
Yeah, he needs some fireworks to be launched from the stands desperately.
That'll get it done, right? It turns out that's all you need. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you a little bit later on today. OTB Gold is Wexford 56, celebrating their All-Ireland victory in 1956 with Ned Wheeler and Art Foley. The Dadcast at 3. Mount Rushmore, South Dublin at 4. OTB Gold is Joe Meets Ruby Walsh at 6. And then the show is live tonight from 7. We have a ton of NFL goodness coming your way this week with the return of OTB Club Gridiron. It'll have highlights from the Snap, reports from games, early bird tickets to events and more. You can sign up now at otbsports.com/Club Gridiron. The Snap is also back this Thursday, brought to you in association with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. Northwestern versus Nebraska takes place at the Aviva on Saturday, August 27th in 2022. Check out the website collegefootballireland.com for full details. During this break, you're going to hear Cian Fahey on the Seahawks' poor season to date. After this break, we're back with Monday Night Rugby featuring Matt Williams and Fiona Hayes.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Are we allowed to enjoy this?
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
Cian O'Mahony is literally an opposition scrum half's nightmare.
People say I refereed lots of matches when I actually played. I double jobbed.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now. He came back early and rushed back for his own ego, not for his team. Like the reality of it is he's not throwing the ball properly. He's also not really making decisions. He's making decisions based on a quarterback who's unable to throw the ball deep comfortably, because in that game they were playing in a box and the Packers recognised it early and they were like, oh, DK Metcalf can run past me all he likes because Wilson isn't going to try and hit him. When Tyler Lockett gets open on a deep comeback route, the ball sails over his head. When he's open in the flat, the ball sailed over his head. The Packers defensive backs were like, okay, we're not scared of the vertical game. We're going to come down, shut you down and force you to try and play the ball and force you to beat us over the top with your quarterback who's playing with a broken finger or a finger that's not fully functioning the way it needs to function. And you just saw it. Like, he had a couple of horrendous throws in that game. And the offense as a whole wasn't particularly good either. The offensive line was getting beat up a little bit. The running game wasn't what you want it to be if you're a Seahawks fan. And then you have Wilson hitting just one of the ugliest interceptions you're going to see, where he throws the ball straight to Kevin King. And you can't blame the finger. It's more likely to be rust. But either way, it was just a horrible, horrible decision. And he needs to probably sit down for a week or two. But you just know the way he is, and you know the way the NFL is, they're not going to sit him down. They're going to play play him through. And anyway, even if they do, they're probably too far back at this point. Like, the record is, I can't remember exactly what the record is, but they're way off playoff spots at this point.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for quick start insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.
Now you're very welcome along. We are joined by Matt Williams, former Scotland, Leinster and Ulster coach. Hello, Matt.
G'day, Joe. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very well. Fiona Hayes, former Irish international, is with us as well. Hello.
Hi, Joe. How are you getting on?
Very well. You survived your MMA ordeal, I hope.
Just about. Still have a few bruises, but I survived anyway.
Matt, don't ask, but don't mess with her.
I'm very. We've had our chats. I'm staying on this side of the fence.
Okay. Well, look, 2002 was the last time New Zealand, Australia and South Africa all beaten on the same day. And what's rare is wonderful, because they were brilliant games in their own right. France, irresistible in Paris, 40 points to 25 against New Zealand. That is a first French win against New Zealand since 2009. And then for England, Twickenham, Marcus Smith, who's settling into the role, kicked a last-minute penalty for the win against the South Africans. England 27, South Africa 26. Also just a point in it in Cardiff, Wales 29, Australia 28. Reece Priestland in the last minute there for Wales. Elsewhere on the Saturday, the Irish women beat Japan 15 points to 12 at the RDS. And then yesterday, the Irish men beat Argentina 53 points to 7. So for Andy Farrell, it has been a very positive November series. He was reflecting on that yesterday and about what pleased him most.
I think the most pleasing thing of the reason why it was great to end in that way is that we grew as a group. You know, there's a lot of lads got some well-deserved game time. There's a bit of controversy that went that we had to deal with throughout the morning and right up until kick-off, and we dealt with it pretty well. So it's pretty pleasing. Jack Conan, he just felt a little bit of something in his quad yesterday, and we gave him till this morning to see how he would wake up, and we thought he'd be okay, but he wasn't. We didn't even get to the warm-up, obviously, with him. So 7:45 this morning, Nick Timoney got a call to come back down from Belfast, and it just shows the strength of the group, and it's exactly what we talked about in there. It shows the strength of the group that he's covering 6, 7 and 8, you know, and can do it seamlessly. You know, for all the mix-up this morning, Tyg Byrne was covering second row, and then all of a sudden he's covering 6, 7 and 8, and then he's back into second row again, and he plays a match like that. Pete comes off the bench to play the full game and end up captaining the side as a Stormer. So I think the most pleasing part about the month really that we've been together is the cohesion as a group and going forward as a group.
Yeah, Andy Farrell there. He'll go off and have a very pleasant Christmas, I suspect. Job well done for him. We'll come to Ireland in a moment, Matt, but let's start with the Southern Hemisphere teams. They're off a long and gruelling season. New Zealand's woes in particular catch the eye. Their performance in Paris?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, Joe. I think we've got to keep this in perspective and not take anything away from any of the Northern Hemisphere teams who have been superb. The French were just magnificent on Saturday night, and was the first time since 2009 they beat New Zealand. That's the first time since 1973 they've won in Paris against New Zealand. So it's a long time between drinks, and they have certainly made up for it. But look, all four of the Southern teams, probably to a lesser degree to the Australians, they're very, very tired campers, mate. They put in long shifts. They've been in bubbles. Like the Argentinians haven't had a home game since before the World Cup in 2019. The bubbles they lived in Australia, they were basically all in Queensland. And really they couldn't go out to cafes, they couldn't go out to restaurants. You were in hotels. You've been in hotels for months, and anyone who's done it, you know, I certainly ended up in my time as a professional, I've struggled in hotels. I still do. I don't like going into hotels anymore I find them very lonely, awful places, and I dodge them whenever I can because of my time in rugby. But for these guys to be, you could just see they were sick of it. They were tired. The New Zealanders looked shattered at the end of that game. They had a look on their face that they usually put on the opposition. That should take nothing away from the Irish display or the French display. But I think we do have to keep it in perspective. I think the gap between the North and South is very small, but I think I wouldn't start crowing just yet. I think I'd keep my powder dry and let's see what happens in the summer.
Yeah, I think that's fair. On New Zealand, for instance, Fiona, they still have won 12 of 15 test matches this calendar year. They were on the road for 87 days before the game in Paris. They'd played 13 tests in 10 weeks, all the while, as Matt says, living in very strict bubbles, restricted interaction with anyone outside the squad and staff. And I don't know to what extent for you it just maybe tempers some of the excitement around Ireland's win the previous week.
Yeah, I think so a little bit. I mean, I watched the game back against France, and I mean, France were absolutely superb. They were brilliant to watch, but it wasn't the All Blacks we've been seeing in the Championship in particular. They just looked tired. I suppose I was expecting to see, a massive backlash from the Irish defeat, but that didn't happen. But I don't think they were physically capable of that. As Matt spoke, they're in hotels, they're in bubbles. They were coming from, Aaron Smith flew out late after the birth of his child, came into the camp. It's very, very hard, I would imagine. Like Matt spoke about hotels. I was at a World Cup as well at one stage for 4 weeks. And I remember I really, really struggled for 4 weeks. So I can only imagine what it was like for those teams coming on the back of spending all their time in Australia, having to go back over to this side of the world. Then again, we definitely saw tired legs. And I think when Ireland are playing them during the summer, it's going to be a very, very different team. They're going to go back, they're going to be licking their wounds, massive games for them, but they're going to be really, really disappointed. That's not how All Blacks perform. And even media are talking about Foster's job. This is what's crazy to me, that it comes into the media immediately because they've lost 2 games. These guys are just going to go home, and I think we're going to see something special next summer.
Well, who'd be a coach, Matt? New Zealand Herald poll, 18,000 votes. Just 5% felt Foster should stay on in the job. 80% want Scott Robertson to come in and replace Ian Foster. But further, so the tiredness point I fully accept, and they do look jaded, emotionally, mentally, physically. I was watching John Kirwan, though, on Sky Sports New Zealand, and this was after the Irish defeat, and he was absolutely citing tiredness as an issue for sure. However, he was also talking about an intellectual stasis maybe, and he was arguing that New Zealand really need to re-examine their thinking. He was saying, 10, 12, 15 years ago, we came up with the pod system. And he was saying, what are we going to surprise the world with next? Because his argument is that New Zealand at the moment are doing nothing all that different to most of the other countries. Physically, they're not often dominating against the bigger nations. And he said, we're just relying on the skill set of individuals, often getting the ball in not great positions and saying, right, come up with a bit of magic. And look, some of them do come up with magic at times. But I thought it was very interesting. He was saying, I'm glad these defeats have happened. Generally we've been thought leaders. We need to get thinking.
I think very fair comments from John, who's a great thinker on the game. If you go back the last 20 years, New Zealand are the leading intellectual property makers, if you like, in the world. It used to be the Australians. It's what through the 90s, the system I was in, it was incredibly creative system. And Australia lost that and New Zealand took it over. But what New Zealand do have, and you've hit it on the head there, Joe, again, is they are unbelievably skillful. And that goes right down through their ranks into the juniors. But what we saw here was the Richie Moyongas and the Bowden Barretts. They were anonymous on the field in the last 2 test matches. You wouldn't have known they were there. I know Barrett got injured in New Zealand. But, you see Richie Moyonga in the Super Rugby and the test matches here in Australia in the Championship. These guys were cutting teams apart. And it just hasn't happened here. Whether that, and there is other thinking. So this is the other great thing that I think has happened around the world. The French are thinking differently. Ireland have changed their thinking, which I think is the most brilliant aspect of the November series for me. They have changed the way they're thinking on attack. I've been banging on about it for years, and I'm absolutely delighted in what I'm seeing there. And England have changed the way they're attacking. We've even seen the South Africans and the Australians have to adjust. That's all been created by what New Zealand have done. So I don't think New Zealand should ring the panic bells, but they do. And I love seeing the Kiwis like this. They lose 2 games, stock market crashes. Jacinta Ardern, their wonderful Prime Minister, has to come out and make statements like the whole world falling apart. They've lost 2 games. Like, you know, like, God's sake, when I was coaching Scotland, I would have given my left arm to win 2 games. You know? It's just New Zealanders overreacting. They've got a replacement there in Scott Robinson, but usually what the Kiwis do is wiser heads do take control. And I think, you know, anyone that writes them off now, well, that's just absolute madness, and we don't want to get into that discussion. But that's sort of typical of the way the Kiwis react. But I would say this, just to finish on it, it's their skills that have set them apart. So while I agree with John to an extent, your skill level of these players is so extraordinary that they do still turn matches.
Yeah. Fiona, on France, just conscious that we'll be going there in Six Nations time in springtime, and things look to be pretty good. Intermac was back at 10. Roman Intermac was back at 10. There'd been an experiment where he played at 12, and I don't know to what extent it hadn't worked out, but certainly he was back at 10, and France just caught fire. I mean, for people who didn't see the game, I think most have seen the viral clip of Intermac running back into his own end zone and picking up the ball and, you know, doing what I think 1% of players in the country would try and do against the All Blacks, and he did it in this amazing length of the field move, which was kind of extraordinary. That was a little glimpse for people who hadn't seen the game of what France were about on Saturday. It was nuts, really.
Yeah, it was. They were just magic to watch. I mean, we talk about DuPont, you know, people were talking about Smith and DuPont coming into this game. I just thought DuPont really stood up. He was absolutely magic to watch. And I just think that himself and Intermac just have something together, and it just seems to work. When he moved to 12, that spark was lacking a little bit. And when they play together, I think they just light it up. It seems like the gods are there and things just work for them. Offloading game, everything they do seems to work. And as you said, that clip that went viral, just even watching that in the game, you're thinking, no way, he's not going to run it. Absolute confidence, no bother to him. Off he went, and you know, it worked. And I think when you play teams like the All Blacks, it's stuff like that you should be trying against them, because they don't expect anyone to do that. And France were magic, but other than that, I just thought they were quite physical as well. And for me, that's something the All Blacks, I felt, have been lacking at times. Their back row haven't been anywhere to be seen in this series when they come over. And I think the French back row done a number on them as well. Yeah. Really, really physical.
It's so funny you mentioned that, Fiona, because some of their conversations now, I mean, I'm a sucker for going onto YouTube and watching their conversations and what they're all saying. That is their big obsession at the moment, Fiona, as well as we need to outthink opposition. They're talking about being physically outmaneuvered by opposition. It's a bit like, you know, the way we talk after World Cups, well, we're going to have to be smarter and we'll have to look to the Japans of the world. That's one of the big focuses in New Zealand at the moment, that physically they don't feel against the top teams, they are coming out on top.
Well, that's it. I mean, but they've always primed themselves. You know, you look at the likes of McCaw, you know, the back row. Anytime you ever talked about back rows in the world, it was always there was always a Kiwi involved, and I just don't see it. I understand they're quite skillful. I'm a big Sevilla fan. They've been mixing and matching, but they haven't seemed to got that match right. I know there's people coming in and out. You had Shannon Frizzell coming in at times, you know, like they get Papali in there, Dalton Papali, but for me there isn't 3 players that are playing really well together, and I don't know if Sevilla is an 8 for me. I think maybe a 6. So they seem to be still looking at that area, and they're not settled on that. And this has been going on for maybe a year, watching all their games, and it's something I'm looking at going, how did the All Blacks not have one of the most powerful back rows? And when they came over to this side of the world, it was really shown up. Ireland, the lads absolutely blasted them off the pitch there. We were all talking about Doris van der Fleer. There wasn't even, and nobody spoke about the All Blacks back row, and it was the exact same in the game in France. I think we spoke about how tired they were, but I don't think it's clicking for them back there.
Yeah. Matt, can I ask you a stupid question?
Of course, mate.
Okay, say we give everyone a month to go home and get a week or 2 on the beach and get rejuvenated and come back and play a World Cup. Who wins the World Cup?
Great questions. Not much between anyone. A fully rejuvenated New Zealand side, they're the favourites for every World Cup since 1987. They've never been a World Cup where they haven't been favourites. It's just been wonderful they haven't won them all. But I think this is really tight. But the World Cup's in France, and I think France can win the World Cup, and I think it's going to be a very close World Cup. I don't think anyone's going to be able to predict it a long way out. But the planning that the French have gone into to put themselves into this position is like something out of a movie. And it started 7 or 8 years ago, maybe more, with their under-20 sides at the World Cups. They've moved these guys through. Even the Australian tour last summer, the 3 tests against Australia, 25 of his top players he left back in France. It was only, I think there was 3 players on the field there the other night that toured Australia. Like they're building up their depth charts. They've got this golden generation that's coming through. He's got 3 or 4 out halves, 3 or 4 nines. Yeah, that was the number 3 hooker that won man of the match. The French are really planning this. The other part, I think it'd be great for rugby for France to win. It'd be great for the global game. Now, I'd love to see Ireland there. Yes. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see Ireland win it, and I think they can. I think it's a lot going to depend on what Ireland do in the next 12 months. But we've been here with Ireland before, where they've beaten New Zealand and then dropped the whole bundle out of it. So let's just keep our powder dry with Ireland. But if I had to put money on anyone, I'd be reluctant to do it, but it'd be on France.
Fiona?
Yeah, I actually had this discussion in Mary Max after the game last night with two Leinster lads. And look, for me, a lot of the time we don't back our own. But I saw an Irish bench that came onto that pitch.
I'm stopping you there. Don't you dare.
Joe, come on.
Don't you dare.
Come on. I saw a bench that came onto that pitch.
Get her off.
Youth that came on were just absolutely outstanding, I thought, in that game. Look, I'm going to say I think Ireland would be thereabouts. Obviously, a lot of people talking about France right now, and England are always in there. But I think we're looking good. Sorry, Joe.
I'm going to blame you. For starting that.
I've said it.
Let's turn to then World Cup winners in waiting. They beat Argentina 53 points to 7. Our rugby coverage is with thanks to Vodafone, sponsors of the Irish rugby team of us, everyone in. For Argentina, I guess the context, even Mario Ledesma's comments further to your point, Matt, earlier on. We're always talking about player welfare, mental health, and then you go 2 years without playing at home and being in a bubble all this time. I challenge any team to do that. It'd be a struggle. That's their 8th loss from 12 this calendar year. I would imagine it has been a fairly brutal year. For Ireland, it's been a great November. 3 games, 19 tries. We heard Andy Farrell earlier talking about the disruption in the morning with Jack Conan out and Ian Henderson going in the warm-up as well, and James Ryan had to go off as well with a head injury, which is very unfortunate given his track record of late there. Nick Timoney, I think, got a phone call half asleep. Brian Baird promoted to the bench and came on and had that amazing break where he ran, I think, 100 metres in about 6 seconds, and Tyg Burns' versatility there for all to see. So, Fiona, this was a different performance, obviously, to the more flowing one on Saturday against New Zealand. Not least because it seemed every Irish line break resulted in an Argentina penalty at the breakdown. So it felt a bit more stop-start. What did you make of Ireland?
Yeah, I thought the first 20 minutes was definitely stop-starty. I think once everyone got in there, I think I really, really enjoyed the game after the first 20 minutes. I think the set piece was on point. Tyg Burn dominated at the breakdown. We spoke Argentina, they were tired. There was missed throws in the line out and everything. But for me, the big thing with Ireland, and I was saying it earlier, was the young guys that came on. People are giving out about Conor Murray's speed of the game. There was a few sighs in the crowd when there was box kicking. I thought he had quite a good game, but when we saw Casey come up, he just brought that speed again. Dan Sheahan, Ryan Baird, that 50-metre run was outstanding, and it was just exciting. It was exciting rugby. They were on top. Guys were trying it. Everything we've discussed about their attacking style, they stuck to that as well. We still saw the multiple playmakers. There was less stress on Joey Carberry. Another great performance in the bank for him. You have people standing up, taking control. It's not all pressure on our 10. Johnny wasn't there, he was injured, and Carberry gets a man of the match performance. That's the kind of stuff we want to be seeing from this window, and it's really exciting to see that.
Matt, sorry to pick out a potential negative here, but Fiona's point on Conor Murray and the upping of the tempo with Casey, that's an ongoing conversation at the moment. Jameson Gibson Park seems to be in pole position. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's how do you speak badly of one of Ireland's greatest ever players, which is Conor. But look, there's no doubt the game changes in pace. I think again, we put it in perspective. I thought that the game against Argentina was always going to be a stop-start affair because no one can hold the intensity they had against New Zealand and repeat it 7 days later. It's just very, very rare. You see that's why you see great semi-finals at the World Cup and the final quite often are done. You can't keep that emotional high. But I did think the pace was poor. It's probably another topic, Joe. But one thing that came out in November is we are so beholden to the referees and the officiating. If the officials can let a game go and get a game moving, the players are trying to be really positive. Everyone across the globe is trying to be positive, but it's the laws and the officials that are stopping it. The Australians had 3 in a row. Like, they had 3 absolute stinkers in a row. They want to play a positive game, they couldn't. And I felt, again, if Ireland want to play this game, this high-tempo, high-pace, high-skill game, which I completely support and I want them to play, they need a referee that's going to allow them to do it. And Connor might have to adjust a little bit. I do think he's slow. He's definitely slower on his tempo than the other players. The plus, and for me, was seeing those young guys get a go. Exactly what Fiona said. Like, the injuries were actually a blessing in disguise. Like, I didn't think, did we really need Peter Mullaney to play that game? We know he's a great player. But I would have liked to have seen some other guys come in. Did we really need Robbie Henshaw to come back in that game? He could have come back through Leinster. What an opportunity to throw some others in. That's probably the only negative. I would have liked to have seen some more young guys.
What do you think is Andy Farrell's thinking in picking some of those players he knows inside out and proven players? What's his thinking in doubling down on them this month?
Well, you can't just throw... There's no point throwing 23 young guys out there because they'll fail. You do need older heads around to guide them through. I just think, again, if you look at what France did against Australia in the summer, they took the chance in a meaningful game. Like, it's not just putting guys in against Georgia or if you've got to play Uruguay or something. These guys need meaningful games to develop. They need to get up around that 20 cap mark by the time we get there. Ryan Baird coming in was a blessing. Like, I would have loved to have seen Coombs in there. I really rate Coombs. It was great to see Casey come off the bench. Why didn't we start him? Why don't we give him the hour and give Connor the 20? But Connor's a line. He doesn't need it. Peter O'May, same thing. He doesn't need it. Pete's got, I don't know how many caps under his belt. He doesn't need it. But the coaches are cautious. It's probably and I'm being picky because I think the coaches have done a really, really good job, and I don't want to run them down. But I just think, again, it's another it might have been a bit of an opportunity missed. But and there's the other one, the young guys that turned up, as Fiona said, they were brilliant. They were absolutely magnificent.
Yeah. He's used 52 players across the calendar year, actually, Andy Farrell. We marvel when Leinster do that, but he has used 52. I do take your point about meaningful games against proper opposition, but 52 is not a bad innings. Harry Byrne came on as well. What did you make of the 2 out halves, Matt?
A bit disappointed with Harry, hate to say it. I'm rating, but I would have liked to have seen him be a bit more accurate when he came on. He was a little inaccurate with his kicks in general play and his passing at times. He was probably nervous, poor kid, but hopefully he'll settle down. That's what I mean. You need time out there where you feel a bit comfortable. And I thought Joey looked the best I've seen him since he had his string of injuries. I think he's been really nervous at Munster. He looked like he's forcing his game a bit. And that's just time in the saddle. You need to get out there and play and just relax and say, well, just let the natural juices flow. And he was forcing his game a little bit, I felt. And I thought that was really good for him the other day. He just looked a lot more. I think those kicks against New Zealand would have done him the world of good, would have done his confidence a world of good. And he looked like he got a little bit of his confidence back, which must have been lagging a bit. That's because of his injuries, because of how much time he's had away. I think, all in all, I'd like to see Byrne given a little bit more time. He needs it. But, Sexton's still the king, isn't he? Like, unbelievable at his age. He is still one of the best in the world. Still talking as much as he always does, giving lip to the Kiwis.
Oh, yeah, he's really mellowed, hasn't he?
He was giving it the whole time. I was just loving it. Because the Kiwis hate that. They just can't. They want you to get down on a bended knee and say, oh, yes, Mr. All Black, thank you very much. And Johnny's just, get back your own side, you mug. What are you talking about? No, and he's talking behind the referee's back. And you can see Whitelock was just hating it. And that's his job. His job's to win the game. And, he's an aggressive, demanding alpha, and he gets out there and proves it. And he backs it up with his play. at his age. It's very extraordinary.
Yeah. So Fiona, I think people are massively encouraged by Ireland with the ball. Like, there's been this massive improvement over the past month. And the other thing which has everybody excited is the Irish pack. I mean, Matt mentioned Coombs and Ryan Baird can't get into the matchday squad at the moment. And you look at Caelan Doris, man of the match against New Zealand, his try yesterday, two-man tackle, and he seems to bulldoze into them. Van der Fleer, he was told to go and improve his carrying. Boy, has he. I mean, he's a player transformed. Keller at one moment pops up in the left wing and throws one-handed pass, and he's been a revelation as well. That's not to mention, the two second rows doing their thing, and so much competition in the back row. Peter O'Mahony said he's enjoyed this month, Peter O'Mahony, more than any other month across his Irish career, and he's playing like it. And that is not to mention the best tight head prop in the world. So this pack is bloody exciting right now.
Oh, so exciting. That front row in particular, I'm loving. We didn't know at the start of the series, like who was our hooker, who's going to be our starting hooker. And I think he's just put his hand up. Keller has put his hand up. He's so dynamic across the park. We talked about maybe inconsistency in line out throwing. Didn't happen. I thought he was really, really good in the Argentinian game in particular. He was everywhere. He was just hungry to carry, and I think that's the thing. They've been given almost this license to be playmakers, to carry hard, to get involved in the backline. There's not very much dummy running. If there's a guy out there front row or not, he's able to pop that pass and he's able to take part in that backline attack. And I think that's what's really exciting for me. Back in the old school days, I suppose you were always told go behind their back, get him out of the way. But now we see him being involved, and the skill set, Tyke Furlong, I mean, he just is amazing to watch. Every time I watch him on the pitch, I absolutely love it.
OTB AM. With Gillette, proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's move.